Let's
Take
go.
it away, Greg.
All right. Thank you so much, Lawrence. Welcome, everybody. My name is Greg Dixon, and I am the chair of the Pacific Northwest section of the AES. I'd like to welcome everybody here, both here, and online here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited today to let you know that we're going to be hearing a presentation from Ian Shores from Highwire Games talking about Portals, the secret weapon of AAA game audio spatialization. So I'm really excited to hear from Ian and learn about this secret weapon today. In addition, I wanted to let you know about future meetings that we'll be holding both next month and January. Next month, we will be hosting a special meeting with Sylvia Massey, recording engineer extraordinaire. Sylvia is going to be talking more about her microphone collection, her mic museum, as it's known. And so that's sort of the volume 2 of that meeting that we have already done one volume with Sylvia, and we're really excited to invite her back. So that will be on Zoom on December 7th at 6 p.m. So we hope you'll join us for that meeting as well. Again, that's December 7th at 6. In January, we're going to meet here again at Digipen on a date to be decided with J.J. Johnston, scientist and engineer, who will be talking about his work with psychoacoustics, in particular, looking at some of the work and research he's been doing on masking. So look forward to that in January. At this point in time, we do need to try to take a formal count of membership. So if we could get a show of hands of AES members that are here. Yeah, let's.
On Zoom, let's have them raise their hands in the
So
chat.
raise your hands.
Or participants, maybe. Participant box? Hands raised are in the participants
And
area.
I'll go ahead and count the members in the room.
And
1.
Jess, can you do it online?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, we have 6 members in the room.
How about online? Oh, wow, there's a bunch. Tell us when you're ready, Jess.
Is that 11 that I'm seeing in Zoom, including you, Dan? Because the
Looks
host.
good. I'm counted in the room, I think.
Okay.
I can't figure out how to get my animated hand up on the screen here.
There's still more. There's more than 11.
Yep.
Reaction?
11 with Gary.
Yeah,
It's under reactions, Gary, reactions, and the bottom choice.
Oh, actually, under participants.
Yes.
If you click on participants, there's
Also there.
his hand. Yes. So
Mini-
that's where I'm counting.
Many ways are good.
Mm-hmm.
We got
All right.
everybody online? How many is that, Jess?
Well, I've got 12, but then I'm seeing Bob Kavanaugh.
They might not be members.
Okay, gotcha. So I see 12.
Okay.
And total?
I am not a member.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Total current participants, 32.
And Jerry Jensen put his hand up, but he didn't have a hand up in the animated. So that's another one. I think you got 13.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, we good? All right, great. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that our meeting today is really I would describe it as a historic moment for our section, being able to get back together here again. And so I'm very pleased to be here. I hope that I can get a chance to talk to some of you who I may have not seen for a while. I'd also like to recognize all the incredible presence we have today from Digipen students. It's great to see you here. So in that vein, One of the things that we'll be doing today is, in addition to Ian's speech or presentation, we're going to hear from Dan Mortensen and Lawrence Schwedler, who will be talking about attempting to achieve in-person and online meetings. So they'll be talking about how it is that we made this all work with this concurrent meeting today. So I'm excited to hear from them as well. And I'm going to thank everyone twice today, because I know that there's been an incredible amount of effort that's gone on at the beginning and end. And I'd like to first extend a big thanks to Dan Mortensen, who kind of helped lead us into the Zoom revolution and now is helping lead us back into a concurrent model. Thank you so much, Dan. And Dan Sound, Dan's business, who has helped generously donate all the amazing audio equipment that we're using today. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Lawrence Schwedler for all his help organizing this and setting things up, and amazing effort leading. August McCubbin, who is our Sound Lab manager, has been an incredible force as well, helping lead the group that helped set this up. We have Jarek Akuliwi, Ben Schwedler, Michelle Mayer, Jonathan Larson, and in addition, Rick Chin and Gary Louie were involved with helping us with dress rehearsals, and I'd like to extend a thanks to them before we begin. The next thing we're going to go to is Dan is going to talk a little bit about an online event that he hosts weekly called Tea Time Topics. So Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your meeting?
Okay, thanks, Greg. So what we do is get together and talk about whatever we feel like talking about, and people give presentations. The next one is tomorrow, actually, and our section friend Alan Guerin is going to talk about what it's like to have received a heart transplant. That used to be an incredible miracle, and now it seems to be a normal thing, so I wanted to hear what is going on. Usually we're talking about audio subjects, though, and the Zoom thing has made it wonderful to be together, and I thought I would call on a couple of people here who are regulars at the thing. Gordon, do you want to talk for a second about what's good about, what do you like about those things, and then I'll call on somebody.
Hi everybody. I guess I've probably learned more about recording industry than I ever hoped to have learned, especially some of the early stuff. It's quite amazing to meet people who've either been directly involved or whose parents have been involved in recording what could be viewed as standard recordings. So it's been interesting from that point of view. Yeah,
Great.
it's
And
good to
where
meet
are
everybody
you?
around the place.
Where are you that we can talk to you like this?
I'm in Glasgow, Scotland, UK, just where the COP26 thing was being held. I'm literally half a mile from the venue where that was being held right now.
Cool, great, thanks. And Jess, you come to these tea time things too. What do you enjoy about them?
Well, I have also learned a ton, and also really appreciated the opportunity to share some of my experiences too, and just feel the camaraderie, you know, as we've gone through the pandemic, and being able to come together from all over the world is really a special thing. So thank you, Dan, for bringing folks together and you know, building a cool thing like that. And yeah, happy to be a part of it. So thanks.
And where are you now?
Oh, currently I'm in north central Minnesota in the Northwoods. Visiting.
Great.
Yep.
And Jess gave a great talk about what it was like touring with Prince's band.
No power generation.
Yes, MPG. And Gordon gave a number of talks about the Isle of Wight Festival and WEM speakers, the history of WEM and stuff like that. So if that sounds interesting to you, send me an email in the chat here, or send me a private message or something, which I'll see later since I think this is my deal here. And I'll send you a link, and it's tomorrow, Monday, and that'll be the last Monday for a while. We go back to Saturdays, either next Saturday or the following Saturday. And it's in the afternoon. It's about this time, whatever time it is where you are, it's about this time there. And we'll look forward to meeting you and getting to know you. So that's it for tea time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dan. At this point, I'd like to turn the time over to Lawrence Schwedler to introduce our special speaker today.
That's okay, I got it. Thank you, Greg. Hi, everybody. This is really cool. I've been sweating this now with probably, I assume Dan has too, and maybe the rest of us who set all this up, but it's really neat to see. We've got maybe, what is it, about 25, 30, 35 people? I can't count. Somebody take a head count. It'd be nice to know for posterity. But it feels here in the Plato Auditorium at Digipen like it's the room with the social distancing is pretty well populated. And then having Gordon, just drop in from Glasgow or folks dropping in from around the world. It really was my dream to make this happen. And when I mentioned this to Digipen's COO, Chris Comer, he said that his father, Claude, this was a dream of his to have this at Digipen, where we would be able to give a lecture and be able to give a presentation to a room full of people that was also interactive with people around the world, so that it wasn't just a one-way broadcast, but that people were able to talk both ways. So hopefully later this evening or this afternoon, we will get a chance to play around with that a little bit more. But now I want to introduce our guest speaker tonight. Ian Shores is the audio design lead at Highwire Games in Seattle, where he works with industry veterans Marty O'Donnell, Jamie Griesmer, and others to create highly polished and innovative independent games.
Lawrence?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but shouldn't we
Please.
talk about the chat and stuff and questions and how that's going to work? Or
You mean how we're going to do the
Yeah.
Q&A?
yeah.
Yeah, I should. You're right. I'm just steamrolling along here, and they're excited to get Ian up here to talk. But you're right, Dan. So we have two mics in the room here for people who are physically present in this space. If you have any questions for Ian, what we'd like you to do is to actually correct me if I got this wrong, Dan, because we were just putting the fine touches on this just today. We'd like you to get up and just stand in front of the mics and wait, and then Ian will, at a convenient point, then call on you to ask your question. If you're attending from Zoom and you want to ask Ian a question, then raise your virtual hand, and I hope you can all do that. I think it's under reactions in Zoom. And Jess, right, Jess, you'll keep an eye on that?
Yes, actually use the participants feature. That's where you can raise and lower your hand. Or if you prefer, you can type in the chat and I'll catch it. I believe Ian's going to take a few breaks to answer questions and then also at the end. So.
Right. So this is all experiment. We're on the bleeding edge here. So the idea is to have it mimic the experience we would have if we were only in the room, where people could say, hey, Ian, I have a question about that. So let's see how it goes. Ian has about a 45, 50-minute presentation, and we do want him to be able to get through it all. And we have planned for some time at the end also for questions there. So Dan, did I cover everything that I should for that, or did I miss something else? Help me out here.
Maybe mention the break and
So-
self-introduction.
Okay, so after Ian's presentation, which in total will be about 50 to 60 minutes, we are, at that point, we probably will hit the 90-minute mark. But what we wanted to do was to give everybody in the room and in Zoom a chance to introduce themselves. I know that might seem like a long process, but we've always done that at our PNW section meetings. And it's really fun to hear everybody just say a few sentences about who they are, where they are, and what they do. So we are hoping to do that after Ian's presentation. And we will be taking a 15-minute break so that people in the room, and I guess people on Zoom, can take a break, but particularly for people in the room. So we will do a 15-minute break sometime after Ian's presentation, and then we'll reconvene and either finish the introductions, and then the rest of the meeting, Dan and I are going to talk, and we're going to have Dan explain specifically how he did this, and if you folks have questions, and we can have actually a discussion about that. So that is the plan. So,
And during that 15-minute break, we'll put the people online into rooms so that they can chat in smaller groups.
for the Zoom participants,
Zoom
if you want to
participants.
chat during the break, we'll have breakout rooms. So as I was saying, that Ian is as audio design lead at Highwire. Their most recent title was Golem, was shipped exclusively on PlayStation VR, and it remains one of the standout games on the platform. It was nominated for the 2018 Game Audio Network Guild's Best Sound Design for an Indie Game category, and was awarded Best Dialogue for an Indie Game. Ian is currently creating audio for Highwire's next title, 6 Days in Fallujah, in the Iraq War, told by the people who actually experienced the conflict. So I want to also mention that Ian graduated as a valedictorian and with honors from the Bachelor of Arts in Music and Sound Design and degree program here at Digipen. Ian was actually in the first graduating class. The program launched in 2012. And Ian, while he was here, in addition to being valedictorian, was also our lab manager. So August, Ian was one of your predecessors in that role. Ian is an amazing musician, fabulous sound designer, and a wonderful person. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Ian Shores to the podium.
I get the privilege as the presenter to take my mask off, which is quite nice. I kept my microphone off while I was taking it off, so we didn't get the any of the rustling. So hello, I'm Ian, and I don't think there's anything else I need to do to introduce myself. That was a great introduction. I feel very flattered. I have been working with portals in games for the last 5 or 6 years ago or so, and I've had so much going in my head, and I'm so excited about them, and I haven't had a chance to talk about them, so I'm really excited to let it all out today. And before I talk anything about portals, I want to tell you a little bit about me. Because if I'm talking about one of the secret weapons of AAA game audio, I'm sure you want to know what the heck do I even know about audio. So as Lawrence said, I was a Digipen student way back when in the first class of Bachelor of Arts in Music and Sound Design students. I worked on several student games while I was here, and I thought about spatialization probably as much as any game audio student. You know, I was thinking about how in a 2D or a 3D game do you make something sound like where it looks like on the screen using panning and distance attenuation. And I had a chance toward the end of my school time here to work on a VR game. This was when VR was starting to be a new happening thing again. Everyone was excited about it. So I got really excited about advanced spatialization. And also towards the end of my school time, I got a chance to work on some small indie projects. And also after I graduated, I had another VR project there, and I got some more time with it. But it wasn't until I started at Highwire Games that I got really deep into it. You know, I had full-time experience and years on these projects to really dig into some advanced spatialization techniques. And on Golem, our first game, it was a exclusive for PlayStation VR. So it was a virtual reality game. And we were trying to figure out the same thing everyone was trying to figure out back then about game audio spatialization, like in VR. How to make something sound like it's above you or below you or behind you, and how you spatialize music in VR. And there's a lot of fun things to talk about there, but most importantly for this talk, Golem was the first time that I had experience with portals and the problem of portals in VR specifically. So I guess before I go on, I want to explain what a portal is. I know a lot of us are coming from different levels of backgrounds, in games or not, or just starting in games. So essentially, a portal is an opening between two spaces. So say you're, well, actually, I have some screenshots from the game. So in Golem, we had a lot of portals like a window in a bedroom, or the entrances to our caves. We had a lot of caves in there, or like these huge doors in this ancient derelict city. And typically in games, when you have a portal, you just do like a simple crossfade to deal with the ambience change. So imagine you're like outside and there's a house. The portal in this case would be like the front door. You're listening to the exterior ambience all around you, and at some point you're going to walk into the house through the portal, and you're going to hit a trigger that says, okay, I'm inside now. And at that point we just do a crossfade, and now you're no longer hearing the outside ambience, but you're hearing the interior room tone. And that actually typically works really well for games, because games are, heavy-handed. They're experiences, not simulations. And, when you go through a portal in a game, you're not thinking about like, oh, how does the audio sound in this like little half-second window? You're thinking about like, oh, is there an enemy inside? And I'm looking at stuff, and there's all kinds of cool stuff to pay attention to. So that works really well. But in Golem, it didn't. And that's because in VR, you have so much space and clarity and precision in the audio that everything you listen to is under a microscope, or under a stethoscope, I guess, or something. So like, we learned really quickly that in Golem, once you hit that trigger and we do the crossfade with the ambience, it just takes you out of the experience. And the whole point of VR, what it's really good at is giving you an immersive experience. So we don't want to take you out of it. So I put in a lot of extra thought. We did some experimentation, and I'm going to quickly go over the solution I came up with Golem before I move on to the really cool advanced portals that we're working on now. So in Golem, I had there were two parts of the game, two pieces of the portals that made it a lot easier for me. One is there weren't that many of them. We had like a couple dozen portals. And two is it's a story game. So I always know exactly where the portals are going to be in the world. They never change. I know what's on either side of the portal. So I can hand author every single one of them and make it sound how I think it should sound. So let me give you an example of what we did in Golem. So we have, for one of the portals, I'll just go with like the first one you see, is you're in a bedroom and there's this secret entrance to a cave in the bedroom. You're like a tiny little doll. So it's more like a crack in the floorboards, but for the doll, it's a big entrance to a cave. And when you're in the bedroom, you're listening to the bedroom ambience, and from the open portal, I placed a sound emitter that was a mono point source version of the cave ambience. So you're walking around, you hear the bedroom all around you, and when you get close to the portal for the cave, you start to hear the cave from the direction of the opening of the cave. And when you approach the opening of the cave, we take that mono point source and we spread it out across all of the virtual speakers. So you have like, eventually when you're standing right in front of the portal, you have this 180-degree arc of cave ambience in front of you, and you have the bedroom ambience all around you. And then when you take another step forward, you've hit that trigger that says, now I'm in the cave, and we do the crossfade, but we do it not just to the room ambience, but also to the portal emitter. So the portal flips to, you're now in the cave, you hear the cave all around you, the portal plays the bedroom sounds, and now since the portal is behind you, it's a 180-degree arc behind you, and as you walk away, it collapses to point source again. You can go back and forth, and it works pretty well. I will say that if you, spend a lot of time, so VR is like a sandbox. You can do whatever you want, and people tend to do whatever they want. So audio designers, when we had audio people play the game, they would play with the audio. And if you really put it through its paces, you can hear the change, although it is pretty subtle. And if you're playing with the audio, you're not playing the game. I didn't really care about that. During normal gameplay, you don't notice it at all. It worked really well. So that was Golem. Our current project, 6 Days in Fallujah, is a lot different. It's a lot more complex. And this is a project that's still in development. I can't talk about it too much. I don't have any screenshots. So before I talk about portals, why it's different in 6 Days in Fallujah, I want to play our gameplay trailer from when we announced the game earlier this year. And before I do that, I just want to give a couple of warnings. One is for all the videos in this presentation, it might be a little choppy over Zoom and things move pretty fast. So if you're prone to motion sickness, just be aware you might have to look away and just listen and enjoy the audio experience. The second warning is every audio demo in this presentation uses some form of HRTF filtering. So it's best experienced on headphones. For those of you at home, hello. I encourage you to put on your headphones. And if you don't have headphones, I just hope you're in a good, balanced stereo environment. For those of us here in the room, we're listening on the PAs in Plato. It'll be better or worse depending on where you're sitting. If you're up close, it'll be better. And, well, we might just have to use our imaginations for those of you sitting in the back. With that said, I'm going to turn off the lights here, and we can watch the gameplay trailer for 6 Days in Fallujah.
My name is Jason Kyle. I was a sergeant with Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. On November 9th, 2004, I entered the city with 12 Marines plus myself. And by November 13th, I was down to 4 Marines and myself.
6 Days in Fallujah recreates stories from the battle based on eyewitness accounts.
One squad has already walked down this alley, so we're just like walking down pretty confidently, and like these guys just open up.
There's one in the alley! There! I got you. Alley looks clear. Go right, on it. Watch out! Suppressing fire!
That was the go command. One tap issues orders to your team based on what you're pointing at.
Yep.
Pin enemies in place with suppressive fire while you flank.
Hold your fire!
Order your team to stack on a door.
Breach it! Open the door! On it!
The go command makes it as easy to direct your team as it is to fire your weapon.
Go, go, go!
The person who goes in first is never wrong. They have the most to fear.
And as soon as I walk in, I see a machine gun right in front of my face, maybe 10 feet, 15 feet from me.
Every time we would go into one of those buildings, you never know what to expect.
You don't know the layout of the house until you get in there. And then you still don't know it until you go all the way through it.
Room clearing, house clearing, it's different every single time.
Marines and soldiers never knew what was waiting for them behind the next door. And if you want a realistic experience, neither can you. 6 Days in Fallujah reshapes the battlefield every time you play. Each room, each building, even the entire neighborhood is generated procedurally. Every map is a new map, So just like actual combat, you'll never know what to expect.
You hear that? Up there! Watch that door! Yep! Covered. Contact! We got contact! Get my back! Go, 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 go! Down there! Look out!
My son, he had his first birthday while we were in Fallujah. I wanted to take a picture. So I wrote "Happy Birthday, JJ" on a piece of cardboard and I held it up. That was the most difficult day I had there. It dawned on me, it's like, I can't die on my kid's birthday. And that's all I thought about all day long, was dying on my kid's birthday.
On me! Let's do this. I got this one. Room's clear! Good here. Come with me. Good. Keep a lookout. Right. What's that? On our left! Who's there? Step out! Salim, nefsek!
So just think, you know, you have this Marine, you're amped up, you know, you got all this adrenaline going through, you kick that door down and it's like family of four. And I'm talking to the dad, I'm like, dude, like, why are you still here? And he's like,
عن طريق التلفزيون طلع بوقت هذا اياد علاوي كان رئيس الوزراء قال ابو مصعب الزرقاوي موجود في الفلوجه وراح احنا نهجم وناخذه.
فلذلك الفلوجه نقدر نقول من بدايه العمليات طلعوا.
وعائلتي وعائله ابويا الله يرحمه طلعت. فابويا بقى راد يبقى قال ما اطلع.
تعرف اهل الفلوجه القدماء ايه يعني هاي بالنسبه لهم عار بانه يطلع محتل جاي ويطلع من.
قال ما اطلع هذا ابقى. قال اموت هنا يابا اطلع قال ما. قلت له لا اني وين.
Okay, so that is 6 days in Fallujah. And I have to say, I promise that'll be the most stressful thing we watch all day. The rest of this is going to be super chill. So 6 days is not a VR game, and you might think that portals and spatialization are not as important, but it's not the case. It's a documentary game, right? So we went out and interviewed over 100 people, soldiers and civilians who experienced the conflict. And we had a chance to ask them many questions, including about audio. And we kept hearing about the chaos and how it's so hard to hear where things are coming from because of the building reflections and the nature of the city. And there's a lot of cool things to do with spatialization that I'm not going to get into because I want to leave some surprises for when the game comes out. But I want to give you one example about portals specifically. So imagine you're in like a typical competitive shooter, which, by the way, 6 Days is not a competitive shooter. But imagine you're playing Destiny or something, and you're inside of a building, and there's an enemy outside the building to your right, and they're shooting their weapon. When they shoot their weapon, you'll probably hear like a muffled version of their gunfire coming from somewhere off to your right. But in real life, sound doesn't work that way. The way sound travels through spaces, it's like water, you know, it leaks in through all the openings. So really, if there's like an open doorway, you're going to hear the sound coming from the doorway. You're not going to be able to tell if it's like off to the left or to the right. You're only going to be able to tell that it's coming from outside. And if you then poke your head out the doorway and move your head around, then you can get an idea of where it's coming from. So there's a lot more cool stuff, but that's, I don't want to say too much about it. So that's about me. Let's get into the meat of the presentation here. But before I go too far, I want to tell you the format of the thing. So I want to talk first about occlusion. Occlusion is like a basic thing we do in games to change the sound when you're in different spaces. And I want to go over that first because we're not all from games here. Some of us might be new to it. So I want to make sure we all have the same frame of reference so that we can know how portals are cool and better. So I'm going to talk about what occlusion is. I'm going to go over how it works in games. And then I have a demo that I made in Unreal Engine and Wise that will be able to hear what basic occlusion sounds like. And then we get to the fun stuff. We get to go over portals, and it'll be the same format. I'm going to talk about how portals work, and I have a demo. It's the same demo as before, but this time there are portals added. So that's the only difference. And then I'll open it up for questions at the end. I also have 2 other spots that I'll take a question break before moving on. So if you have any, line them up. Okay, so let's get into it. An introduction to occlusion. I want to give you a spoiler alert. It's actually 2 things. So how does it work? First of all, what is it? Essentially, occlusion is when there's a sound source and a listener, and the path between the two is blocked, so we change the quality of the sound. An example of that that's been on my mind lately is the masks we're all wearing, how it muffles the sound coming from your mouth. A more typical example would be like I'm giving a presentation in an auditorium right now, and anyone who's outside the auditorium is going to hear not very much of it, but a little of it. And the way we determine if a sound is occluded or not in games is with a line of sight check. If you take a look at this diagram here, we have a sound source on the left and the listener on the right. And there has been a ray cast from the source to the listener, and it checks to see if it can see it. Since it can't see the listener, then we decide, okay, we're occluded now. And once we decide that we're occluded, we want to decide how the quality of the sound changes. And there are some typical filters that you use in games. The most simple is volume, so we can just turn down the volume. A very common filter would be the low-pass filter. So if you think of this diagram here, on the left is like a dance club, and on the right, you're like taking a bathroom break or something. And you're going to lose a lot of the high end while you're in the bathroom. So we'll use a low-pass filter usually to mimic that. And then I also know from my own experience that it's not so simple as just a low-pass filter. The way the sound travels through the wall is a much more complex acoustic phenomenon. And I'm not an acoustic engineer. I'm an audio designer. So I work from my experience to design other experiences. So I know that when you're on the dance floor, there's a big thump in your chest. And when you're in an adjacent room, then you don't get that thump in your chest. So I would add a subtle high-pass filter as well. If I were to design this club in a bathroom scenario, I would use a pretty heavy-handed low-pass filter, a subtle high-pass filter, and for the volume, I would actually turn up the volume because I want to like accentuate the filtering, and it might make it too quiet to really hear. So I'll turn up the volume when you're in there as well. Okay, so that's basic occlusion. If you want to get more precise with it, there's a couple things we can do. First of all, we've done a line of sight check to determine if we're occluded or not, but if we want to find out how occluded we are, we can do a number of secondary checks. So in the diagram here, we've done the first ray trace, we're occluded. Now let's draw a radius around the sound source. This is a pretty typical way to do it. And we're going to plot several points along that circle, or more likely in a 3D game it'll be on a sphere. And we'll plot several more points and we'll perform several more line of sight checks. In the diagram I only put 3, but typically you would do something more like 10 or 12. And that can tell you, based on how many can see and how many can't, like a percentage or a scalar of how occluded you are. And then another thing we should keep in mind is the signal path, where we want to apply the filters, basically pre-fader or post-fader. And with that in mind, I want to bring back the spoiler alert from the beginning that occlusion is actually 2 things. So first of all, we've only been talking about occlusion, and that's when the sound and the listener are in completely separate spaces. The sound, if you have an environment reverb, it's going to bounce around that original space, and it's not going to escape to the listener. So this would be like a pre-fader filtering. You might want to get a little more fancy and like apply a different set of filters to the reverb, like, well, to taste, you know, salt and pepper to taste. You might just turn it off completely. The other scenario we should think about is called obstruction. And that's when the sound source and the listener are in the same space, but with a smaller obstruction blocking the path. So in this case, with the environment reverb, it would go around the space and you would be able to hear the reverb of the room you're in, even if you can't hear the direct sound source. So we would apply kind of a post-fader filtering here, where we would muffle the output bus of the source of the sound, but we wouldn't touch the reverb, so you have a nice live space around you. So that's occlusion. We do a line of sight check to determine if we're occluded. We do a number of secondary checks to determine how occluded we are. We figure out what kind of filtering we want to apply to it, and where in the signal path we apply the filters with respect to whether it's occluded or obstructed. So let's go over the demo. I have created this little demo map in Unreal and Wise. And it's like a little house in a yard, and it's a rainy evening. And inside the house, there's a piano playing in the living room. And inside one of the bedrooms, there's a conversation happening. So we're going to walk around the house. We'll hear how it's fully occluded. We're going to hear just the dry, muffled signal. And inside, we will hear the obstructed dry signal, but the environment reverb will be unobstructed. Also, I want to say, it's kind of funny, I realized this halfway through making this presentation, but it's a dry and a wet signal, and when you're in the house, it's a dry environment, and when you're out in the rain, it's a wet environment. So that's where the good things stop. We have some not so good things with basic occlusion. We have audible fade times. Because of how the line of sight checks work, you have this big window where you can see the source, and this big window where you can't see the source, and then this little window where you can kind of see it, kind of can't. And that little window is where those secondary checks come in. But if you like move in and out of line of sight pretty quickly, you can get pretty fast jumps in the occlusion value. So to deal with that, to make it so we don't have the filters jumping around really fast, we apply a slew rate to the control value, and that can smooth out the filtering a bit. But it also means that you can hear the filters fade in and out. So that's not great. We also have finicky line of sight checks. And that's more of an issue with the realistic environment I've created in this demo. It's a pretty typical kind of like home with hallways and corners and doors and in a game you actually tend to have like really wide open spaces, and even when you're inside, like it's usually like a big room with lots of space for sound to bounce around and not too many obstructors. But in a more realistic scenario like this, the line of sight checks can get pretty finicky, and they might like turn on and off really quickly if you're like looking through the hallway at a sound. Another thing that's not so great is the environment reverb is not spatialized. It's essentially like a 2D convolution reverb that when you're in the reverberant space, we just feed it into your ears. And you might not notice that very much. It'll be kind of subtle in the first one. But once we get to the Portals version with the fully spatialized reverb, you'll notice a big difference. Before I go on, motion sickness can be a little worse with these videos that I'll be showing later. So just forewarning, let me shut off the lights and I'll start the video.
Which is 11% of the total surface area of the lower 48 states.
Making money off of it? No. Well, then drain it and repurpose it. Set it on fire and repurpose it. Stop it from burning and repurpose it. Like, if we can't make money off of it, it can't possibly be useful. And luckily, since the environmental movement really started in the 70s, we've realized that that's not necessarily true. That even if you
Okay, so that is the demo without portals, just basic obstruction and occlusion. Before we go on, it's break time. I don't see any questions here in the room, but if you have some, feel free to line up. And Jess, did we have any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat yet, but some cool comments. Jinda says, it looks like Call of Duty or Battlefield, the video game. Kevin says, this looks and sounds amazing. And Gordon said, my 96-year-old mom, who was a medic in Burma in 1943, just poked her head in the room wondering who was shooting. And Bob said, my oldest son was a corpsman on the front lines during that conflict. So it was very impressive. Thank you.
Okay, a corpsman actually in the conflict. Okay, we have a question in the room.
And I forgot to turn the mic on, so flip the switch on the front side of that microphone, standing towards you. There you go.
Hello. Thanks, Ian, for the wonderful talk so far. I was wondering if maybe you could expand a little bit more on this idea of pre-fader versus post-fader when you're talking about obstruction and occlusion specifically, because I know that for me and a lot of the other audio engineers here, we're very familiar with what this means on a mixing board, but I was wondering if maybe you could help us clarify and understand how this is working, this idea of pre-fader and post-fader with respect to the game engine and your sound.
Okay, yeah. So game audio is like a big live sound mixing board, basically. You have each of your, you can like consider each of your inputs as like an object in the world. And so like you have like your singer on stage, they might be sent to like a delay or a reverb, right? And the filtering effects, like if we're applying a low pass filter, if they're fully occluded, then we would apply that to the signal before it hits the aux send, so that whatever gets sent to the reverb of the singer is also going to be muffled. And if it's come on, and if it's if you want to apply it in a post-fader sense, like if it's just obstructed, then we apply that filter to the singer's voice at a point in the signal path after it has been sent to the aux send. Does that answer the question?
Just to clarify, you're saying that when you're doing full occlusion, that you generally apply the filtering to the sound object before the send.
Yeah.
And then when we're doing obstruction, we want to leave some of the original sound, sort of the direct sound in there, and then I guess so post fader for the obstruction, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Thanks. I think that clarifies it for me.
Great.
So what does this kind of process, like when we saw with the last video, like what kind of process does this look like in middleware? I know you can crossfade sound effects relative to other sound effects, but is it more complex than a set series of play and stop events? Is there anything else to that kind of setup?
Yeah. So you'd have like you would never like stop the sound and like switch over to a muffled version of the sound. You keep the sound playing, and then like in Wise or Fmod, you can set like a runtime parameter, a parameter on it that can control how much filtering is applied. So you'd have like two different parameters. You'd have an obstruction parameter and an occlusion parameter. So you could set to like, I'm more familiar with Wise. So like in Wise, you would set the occlusion to a voice low pass filter. So it occludes the voice itself, and then the obstruction, you would set it to like an output bus low pass filter. So it occludes the bus that the sound is going out of, but not the sound itself.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no more questions, I'm going to move on to my favorite part of the talk, the introduction to portals. And hold on to your butts, folks, because it gets a lot more fun here, and it gets a little more complex. So same format as before. How do portals work? First of all, like I said, a portal is an opening between two spaces. So in order to have portals, we need to have rooms. Let's look at the occlusion example from before, and we simply need to assign rooms to each of the spaces in here. In the demo that I made, I put a room component in the map, and I set it to the right size. And I'm not going to go too much into it because I want to talk about portals, not about Wise. But basically, you need a list of what all the rooms are and where they are, and that way the audio engine can keep track of what room is the source sound in and what room is the listener in, and where are all the portals. So when we have rooms, we have some new parameters to keep in mind. The first is transmission loss, and this is essentially like the occlusion filtering from before. When a sound goes out of the room that it was originally in, you're going to have a transmission loss filter applied. And the way we get more precise with this is we use an acoustic thickness parameter. So on the diagram, you can like imagine that middle thick wall is like a big cement wall, and that we could assign an acoustic thickness parameter of 100% to that. So 100% of the transmission loss filter will be applied to anything going through that wall. But if we're like off on the left and we're listening through the thin wall, maybe that only has a 0.2 acoustic thickness, so we only apply 20% of the transmission loss filter. So with rooms, we can have portals. And there are some new parameters with portals as well. Excuse me. We have now the direct path of the sound like before, but we also have an indirect path. If the sound travels through the portal, it'll be called an indirect path. And an indirect path has a diffraction angle. I'll go over that in a minute. In fact, I'll go over that right now. So let's to wrap our heads around the new parameters, let's go over some examples. The first one, the diagram from the last slide, is very simple. You just have a single direct path that has no transmission loss, has no diffraction. So it's essentially going to be like there's no room or portal there at all. It's going to be unchanged. In reality, it actually is changed a little bit, but I'll go over that when I talk about environment reverb. For now, we can just assume for the dry sound, nothing changes. In a different example, if the portal is not exactly between the two objects, if it's not in line of sight, then we have now two paths. We have the direct path of the sound and the indirect path. And we have, the indirect path also has an angle of diffraction. Let's look at the filters for these paths. So for the direct path, we have a distance. That's the distance between the source and the listener. And we're going to apply a distance attenuation to that. And then we're also going to have a transmission loss filter that's applied by the wall in between them. For the indirect path, we also have a distance. This is if you notice, it's a slightly longer distance, the distance from the source sound to the portal to the listener. And then we have a diffraction angle, which is also the angle from the sound to the portal to the listener. So those are the filters we would apply to that sound. And let's look at a more complex example. So in this one, we have 4 rooms now. We have room 1, where the source of the sound is. Room 2, a hallway that the sound is going to travel through. Room 3, an unused room. And room 4, the exterior of the building, which I'm calling a room for the purposes of this to make it easy. So again, we have the direct path of the sound and the indirect path. And the indirect path now has 3 angles. It has this shallow angle out of the first portal. It has another angle. Now this, I've only talked about portal diffraction so far, but this is geometric diffraction. The diffraction off of the game world's geometry. And it's essentially the same as portal diffraction. It just has different considerations for performance. It's a little less performant. And then we have the third angle of diffraction right there. And these 3 angles will add up into a single diffraction value that we can use to apply the filter. And it's worth noting here that this uses the Tony Hawk Pro Skater rules of adding angles, where once you get to 360 degrees, you don't flip back over to 0 and start over. You keep adding it up, so you can get 720 and 1080 and so on. So if you're going down like a spiral staircase, you can lose the direct sound pretty quickly. So here we have the direct path with a distance filter applied, a longer distance filter than last time, and a transmission loss filter. The indirect path has a distance filter, which is very long, and a diffraction filter, also a larger diffraction filter. One more example. Same diagram as before, but if you notice in the top left, there's a new portal between room 1 and the outside. So we're going to have another indirect path. So now we have a direct path and 2 indirect paths. The same filters applied from before to the previous paths, and now for the third path, we have similar filters applied. And it's worth noting here, typically in games, when we talk about sound sources and sound emitters, they're synonymous. But when we have multiple paths for the sound, we actually have multiple sound emitters for a single sound source. So we have, in this case, a sound emitter on the closest occluding wall at the angle of incidence from the sound source. And then we also have 2 more sound emitters on the closest diffracting angles of each indirect path. So if you imagine yourself as the listener in this situation, you can rotate in place and it's going to change the stereo image pretty drastically. And as you move around the space, it's going to change the spatialization quite drastically. So that's rooms and portals. One more thing to consider in portals is the environment reverb. So the environment reverb now can have 3D positioning. So let's keep some more things in mind than we usually do when we're thinking about environment reverb. The first is location. The simplest location is if you're in the same location as the sound source. So in this case, you might as well just have a 2D reverb. It'll be the same as we heard in the occlusion obstruction example, but if we want to get fancy, we can rotationally lock it and make it like a surround reverb or an ambisonic reverb, and you can hear, like when you move your head, you'll hear the sound change around you in subtle ways. We also have the more exciting version of location when the source and the listener are in different locations with an open portal in between. In this case, the location of the environment reverb is on the closest diffracting angle through the portal. So now that we have an actual 3D location for the environment reverb, we should pay attention to the distance. So there's a distance away from the emitter for the reverb, and you can apply a distance filter, which changes the sound of the reverb. And we also can use spread. Just like I talked about in the Golem example, when you approach the portal, the mono point source, in this case of the reverb, opens up entirely to a 180-degree arc, and when you step through into room 1, it becomes all around you. We should also think of diffraction angles for the reverb. It'll diffract around the portal that it's coming out of. In this case, it diffracts using the normal of the portal to the listener, as opposed to the direct sound diffraction, which has the angle of the source to the portal to the listener. It's a slightly different angle, but essentially it's the same thing. And then finally, let's think about our auxiliary sends. Usually in games, when we think about reverb and auxiliary sends, we're thinking of a sound source that gets sent to the environment reverb. But now, our environment reverb can be considered a sound source of its own. And if it exists in a space where there is another reverb, it'll get sent to that environment reverb as well. And that's usually pretty subtle, but if you have like very drastically different spaces, like a cathedral into an anechoic room into a tunnel, then it can make an appreciable difference. That was a lot, so question break. Oh, I see one. Okay, we have a question in the room. We have 2 questions in the room. Oh boy.
Yes, I have a lot of questions actually. So when you have like a bunch of different paths from your source to your listener, you have to have a bunch of different emitters, right? So how do you A, keep the processing power down, B, how do you manage the phase on all of those emitters?
Okay, so for both of those, there's not great answers. The answer to the first question about performance is, yeah, it's like incredibly CPU intensive. In modern games, we can have like thousands of voices and all kinds of effects, and modern PCs and modern consoles can handle them like no sweat. But with this kind of multiple path spatialization, that's when you really start to have a lot of performance issues. And I know on 6 days, we have, Fallujah is a huge city. We have thousands of portals, right? So our engineering team has done some work to make it more performant. You can also manage like the query time, so how often it recalculates diffraction on the portals. You can make that like, typically it's 1/5 of a second, but you can increase that a little bit. So there's all those different parameters. You can change how fast they update in the engine, so that can help as well. You can also choose how far away a sound can path. So it's limited just by distance of how many portals it can go through. There's some ways around it, but yeah, it's definitely very CPU heavy to do these indirect paths. And as far as phasing goes, I've only had phasing. So I'm not a scientist, right? I'm a designer. So typically, if something works, I'm just happy and I keep using it. And the only times I've experienced phasing are when there's like a bug in the implementation and you have multiple paths that are like right on top of each other almost. And you can get phasing there. But like when you have these paths in like pretty distinct areas and they all have their like distinct filtering, and they're also playing at the same time, we don't have any like delay on them, then I haven't experienced any phasing there. It's worked out pretty well.
Hi, a bit of a question on your diffraction filters. How would you go about constructing those in a way that makes a initial diffraction different from, say, you have 5 different angles of diffraction before it actually reaches the listener?
So in that case, the audio engine actually just adds up all of the diffraction angles, and you don't apply a filter at each angle. You just apply one filter at the end right before you hear it. That's like a sum of all the diffracted angles.
So it wouldn't matter as much to have customized diffraction angle filters for different scenarios? You would just use the same filter across all of them?
Well, for like a single path that travels multiple angles, yeah, I would just use the same filter. But I might like, if it's a different type of sound, I might have a different set of filters to make it sound better. Or I suppose if you wanted to get really fancy, one thing that audio designers do with occlusion sometimes is they'll use that raycast to determine what type of surface it hits, so they can change the filter that way. So you could like figure out the type of surface that it's diffracting around, like if it's concrete or cloth or something. You can apply different filters that way. But I imagine that would be like more performance heavy. And also you need a programmer to help you set that up.
Sure enough. Thank you.
Were there any questions on Zoom before I go on?
No questions here. Looking good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's get to the demo for portals. I have the same demo as before. We're going to be listening to the house in the rainy scene. And just as before, we're going to take a walk outside. We're going to hear all the sounds inside fully occluded. We're going to walk inside, and we'll hear the obstructed dry signal and the unobstructed wet signal. But that's where the similarities end. Now we're going to be using angle of diffraction instead of line of sight, and that's much more precise. So instead of having that little window before where it's, it can change the amount of occlusion, now every time we're out of line of sight, it's going to be calculating the angle of diffraction on every angle. So it's going to be constantly changing no matter where you are in the room. So it's going to be a lot more precise. And we don't have to worry about fade times anymore because, again, it's constantly changing. It's not going to jump like crazy large values unless you're like a jet airplane flying through the kitchen or something, which is not going to happen. And then we also have fully spatial reverb. So you'll hear Subtly, at home, if you're on headphones, you'll hear subtly the reverb stay in place as the head turns, but much less subtly, you'll hear the reverb fully spatialized out of portals in conjunction with the dry sound that comes out of the portals as well. We get some extra, some bonuses with this. You know, any sound that is 3D can be diffracted through portals. So if you were paying close attention in the last one, you may have noticed that when I stepped inside of the house, the rain from the outside became muffled. In this one, it does that as well. However, the rain is now going to be portaling through the door when you come inside, and we're going to be able to hear where the rain is coming from. It's going to echo through the hallway. So there's like a bunch of cool freebies you get with it. And then one last point. For those of us in the room who are listening on the PA speakers, I turned on the debug draw for the diffraction angles. So even if we can't hear the portaling, you'll be able to see the line from the source sound to the angle it's diffracting. You'll see a sphere on the angle, and if there's other angles that it diffracts, you'll see more lines drawn and more spheres. So with that out of the way, here comes the last demo. I'm going to turn off the lights here. And this is the same thing as before. The only thing is different is I added portals and I set up filters for transmission and diffraction instead of occlusion and obstruction.
I would propose that that's slightly misleading. I think they're endangered because they live in wetlands, and wetlands are endangered, as we'll see. Think about it, Chuck.
I don't know. I took it more as
like they're all hiding out in the wetlands? Because it's a terrible place to hide out.
No, it's not bad because it's got 31% of the plant species, and it's a pretty rich, biodiverse area to live in if you're an endangered species.
For sure.
Wetlands already.
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
Yeah.
I like this guy.
I think that's an exact quote.
Yeah, he's my kind of dude.
So another stat that I thought was pretty interesting that will just kind of needs to form the basis or the undercurrent of this whole episode is that, so, and we keep talking about the U.S., there's wetlands found all over the world with different types and varieties and different climates and different continents. Every continent is different in Africa. But in the United States in particular, we have a long history of filling in and draining wetlands for other purposes.
Yeah.
So much so that, let's see, I believe. Starting in the 50s, we were doing away with wetlands at a rate of about 60,000 of those acres per year.
Yeah, and it's gotten better since then, but yeah, up until the Clean Water Act, it was just like, hey, you know what looked great there?
That's been such a driving force. Like it's like looking at land or ecosystem. All right. So that was the Portals demo, and before I move on, I want to give a big thanks to Professor Bruce Stark
composition professor here who let me use his piano piece, Gentle Rain. I thought it fit quite well. And that was also, a podcast episode of Stuff You Should Know when they're talking about wetlands. I didn't ask them for permission, but I think they'll be fine with it. They seem like pretty cool guys. Yeah. And with that, that's all I have, and I'd like to open it up for questions if there's any more. I don't see any in the room. I can like do a little jig here if you need time to like come up with the questions. But we had a lot during the talk, and you know we're almost at an hour now, so no pressure.
There's some cool comments on the.
Yeah, we've got a few cool comments here. I think it's Andre says that is a noticeable and much more natural sounding difference. Derek Knight says, yeah, this feels so much more realistic spatially. Very cool. And Droven asked, will there be a recording of the talk I can access? I know we're recording the Zoom. I'm not sure. Maybe someone else can speak to that as to when or if it'll be available. Or
whether or not that will be available, my LinkedIn is up on the slide. So if you want to message me on LinkedIn, I can probably at least send you a download link to the demo videos.
You know, we don't see the slide here on Zoom. Is there a way? There we go. Okay.
You know, I can, or maybe you can write that in the chat or something to help the people out at home.
Got it. Will do. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Dan, we will be, we're recording this meeting, and the meeting will be posted to the PNW Section website. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think this video needs some editing, though. I'm not digging a couple parts of the presentation, but they can be fixed, but yeah.
So it might take us a while, but the folks on the PNW committee, people like Gary Louie and Dan Mortensen, put in, and Rick Chin always put in time to get our meetings posted as videos. And so I think, Ian, if you have no objection to your meeting presentation being part of that, and once we get to the video editing, then that this whole meeting will be online and you can see it there. I did have a question, Ian. When you're working on this stuff, you know, a lot of the things we talk about with spatial audio and just with audio in general are subtle things that, you know, we as audio engineers care and love. You know, the general public maybe less so. I mean, they'll notice if it's not there, but they might not really notice what it is. But for you as the engineer and the designer making this stuff, how are you actually listening to these subtle distinctions, particularly with the spatialization? Are you working on headphones? Are you working on closed or open ear? Are you working in your studios? Some of these questions, I know the answers to some of these questions, but I would love to hear you just talk about your process of actually mixing this stuff. And of course, with game audio, when we talk about mixing game audio, the only way to mix a game, it's not like mixing a film. You have to play the gosh darn thing. So how do you go about making those critical listening decisions as to, you know, whether it's pre or post fader and whether the reverb is, you know, convolution reverb, or whether it's spatialized in the portal, or all those, you know, what's your process of listening?
So there's like, I separate mixing into like two categories. One is like the traditional pulling the faders everywhere, but I kind of leave that towards the end. Most of the actual like mixing work we do is like testing and tuning. So we're tuning like the lengths of distance attenuations and how much something is getting sent to a bus based on how much it's diffracting. And as to like how I make those choices, we're on headphones. I made 6 Days in Fallujah specifically. This is what's on my mind because that's what I've been working on. To be primarily a headphone experience, like an HRTF virtual speaker headphone experience, and we support like stereo speakers and surround speakers and all that. But all the primary work is done mixing on headphones. And when I need to hear something specific, I try and simplify it as much as possible. I try and create test scenarios. So like we have these, you know, the huge cityscapes with tons of portals. I'll just take one house and I'll close all the portals except for one. And I'll just walk around and hear how that sounds. And I'll solo the direct sound, and then I'll solo the indirect sounds, and I'll solo the dry sound, and I'll solo the wet sound. And there's parameters on all of those to go over. It gets really complicated working with rooms and portals, all the different parameters that you have to tune. And that has a big effect on the mix. So I try not to actually do any of the polling faders until I am happy with those tune values, with those parameters. And, you know, you just have to be careful about the sounds that you add into the game, that they're, like, I don't normalize everything and try and make it super loud and then put it in the game and turn it down. I just, I try and volume match to the game what I'm making currently, and when I put it in, it should be really close. So that way I can focus on the parameter tuning, and then later on we can pull faders, and then switch over to the surround sound mix mode. Like in the game, you can choose if you're on surround sound speakers or not, and then change the mix specifically for that with faders. So it's how is well, I think that's how, and then it's just really complicated and takes a lot of time. So if you're a student here and you want to do portals in your game, maybe only do it if it's really important, and hope you don't have too many portals. I see a question in the chat before we go to you.
We've got, which headphones do you use for monitoring?
I use the Sony's, the MDR 7506s. I really like the crisp high-end, makes hearing the spatialization a lot easier, and they're cheap. You can get them for like $80. Let's go to the room. Let's go back and forth. Question in the room.
Hello, awesome presentation. I'm kind of curious about like the mediums that you're considering when making these or setting these filters for like diffraction angles and diffusion. So the angles you're ticking and like checking the angles and meshes, right? As you're playing through the game, you have presets for like certain meshes, like if you're walking through like a metal corridor versus like a stone, wood, brick, that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. That so those types of materials in the spaces have more to do with like the late reverb than they do with the diffraction.
Okay.
Like the diffraction angles will all use just some form of high pass, low pass filter.
Right.
Then that's per sound. That's not per space.
Oh, okay.
And then with the when the indirect sound, when the reverb passes through portals and gets sent to other reverbs, then that's how the different materials of the spaces will affect the sound.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you're checking the actual materials themselves, and then you have these presets, or not presets, but like.
No, actually, typically I just have like preset buses that I use. So I have like a small room bus and a large room bus and like a cluttered room bus.
Okay.
And like there's like a big, I forget what I call it, but like kind of auditorium style thing with tall ceilings.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I don't try and like simulate it too much because that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And also, I like to design experiences to sound the way I like them, not necessarily the way that they would sound in the real world. I think actually this is something I thought about bringing up in the talk, but I've done a lot of like spatial listening over the last several years, and I've noticed a lot of like really funny like glitches in the matrix, where like I have this running joke where I'm listening really closely and I think, oh, that wouldn't fly if we put that in the video game. Like no one would believe that, but it's just how the sound works. So that in the real world, yeah, like sound spatializes in crazy ways that you don't notice. It's subtle.
Cool. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're gonna try something. Kevin Styles has a question. Kevin, did you actually want to unmute and ask yourself, or are you able to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's up, Ian? Great presentation. That was awesome. That was really good. It was really interesting, and it's opened up a lot of ideas in my mind about sound and spatial stuff. But the question I have is, you know, when you're working with portals like in a split screen multiplayer gaming experience, what's that like? What's that process like?
I haven't done that before, but that sounds like hell.
Yeah.
You know, I'm reminded of something the It Takes Two people from Sony. They've been doing a talk, and they're like one of the most famous split screen games that came out recently. And they mentioned that their ambience was like just rotationally locked. It was just all around you. And that's just because in split screen, there's like no way to make it sound right for one person, but not make it sound wrong for the other person. If you're trying to make it like super precise. So I think if I had to do split screen like that, and actually I would try using portals, but I don't know how successful it would be.
Cool, thank you.
Greg?
Oh, okay. I had a question about, so you mentioned that portals in and of themselves are really quite complicated to get sounding right. And in the game trailer that we watched, it seemed to suggest that this is a procedurally generated game. So my question for you is, how do you talk to game designers to talk about what you can and can't do with procedural level generation, and kind of what do you need to know from your designers about those rooms? And do you find that there are situations where the designers do things with rooms where you say, no, 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 we can't do that? What does that look like?
Yeah, man, I would love to do a whole talk just on procedural generation and how it affects sound. There's a lot of really interesting things with that. But basically it's like a bunch of puzzle pieces that fit together, right? You know, you're not going into the level and putting a portal here and there. You say like, this is like the doorway asset, and there's always going to be a portal there, and this is every type of room that could spawn, and here's all the room components that will apply to those rooms. So it's a lot of like tuning of global parameters and just trying to get it all to work as it will work. And then I get to say to the game designers, a lot of it, it's actually really fun. Like, oh, it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. Like, if you want sound to come out of the basement, you got to open the door to the basement and for it to travel out, because that's how sound works. And it's still a back and forth. Like, I'm not cheeky with them like that. But we try and come up with solutions together. So like, maybe if sound can't portal the way they want it to be, like if you're barricaded in a room, we can add some like holes in the barricade where sound can leak out, or we can add other types of sounds. Like if it's a closed door at the end of the hallway that we want you to go to, then we can put like a light in that hallway that buzzes, and so there will be a sound coming from that hallway even if you can't hear what's on the other side of the door. So yeah, it's just working together with the designers to come up with creative solutions to support what they want the gameplay to be.
Thanks.
Any questions in Zoom, Jess?
Yeah, we've got some questions from Max. Max, do you want to unmute and go ahead?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks for the talk. Yeah, I was just wondering if, since Fallujah seems to be a very like story-driven game, if you ran into situations where maybe the like realistic spatialization that you were trying to do maybe wasn't like helping you tell the specific story in an instance or a moment, and maybe if you had to like kind of if you were able to opt out specific sounds, or if you needed to build some kind of solutions for some one-off moments.
So no, actually, there have been instances where like a sound that I'm trying to figure out how to say this without going into detail, where a sound that like I assume wouldn't sound that way would like I would say, oh, it doesn't work that way. We can't do that part of the story, but you know, these are people's stories that we've talked to, and we ask them questions about how it works. And there's a lot, so this gets into like why we're making a game like 6 Days in Fallujah, but there's a lot that people don't understand about war, about how it really works. And I'm not going to get too much into that, but it means that we don't understand how the sound works in a lot of ways too. So I find when we actually dig in and do the research, the way the sound actually works in the real world will actually match what the stories of what people are telling us. You know, there's a lot of chaos and frenzy, and you don't know where sounds are coming from, but the more precise we are with how the sounds are spatialized, the more we create that chaos and frenzy just because of the nature of the environment and the sounds that are happening in it. You have a question in the room?
Yeah. Thanks for the talk. That was really lovely, and especially the second demo with the portals, with the piano in the room. That was just, it was a really nice vibe, and I really enjoyed that. It was much more convincing than the first one. And I was wondering, as I was watching that, I noticed all of the spheres for calculating kind of the angles to where the player was. They were all about at eye level. And I also noticed, just with the 2D examples, it's only in 2 dimensions, and maybe this is a bit of a simplistic question, but I was wondering how the system handles verticality.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you had been standing on the back porch of that house and thrown a rock through the bottom of that, the back window or something, would it have the resolution? Would the player be able to tell that the sound was actually kind of coming from a little bit below them, rather than kind of all of it staying about eye level?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to the answer to that question. One is if the system handles it, and the other is if you as the player can actually localize it. So yeah, the system does handle it. Like wherever the portal is, it's going to go at the closest diffracting angle of the portal. So as precise as you make the portals, it'll determine the height correctly. In that demo, actually, I just made the portals the like entire size of the door, because it can get pretty performance heavy to like you could stack up a bunch of little mini portals on it, and whichever area of the glass breaks or something, you can open up just that. But then, you know, you have a lot more kinds of portals to deal with in that case. So it's a lot more performance heavy. But yeah, you definitely can, like if I were like if I were an ant and like I was at the bottom of the portal, then it would diffract towards the bottom of the portal because that's where the listener position is. And like if you're up on a balcony, like in an enclosed atrium, and you're looking down at an open portal, it'll be like wherever you are, the closest diffracting angle to the listener. So in that way, height is taken into account.
Gotcha.
Whether or not you can localize it is like a whole big can of worms. It deals with, it's like what kind of HRTF filter you apply and how the person themselves hears spatial sound, because we all hear it slightly differently. You know, how long you've been using that filter, because you know, when you play a game that has a certain HRTF filter, if it's not similar to what your head is, it at first won't sound right to you, but you'll get used to it and you'll learn to hear it correctly. Just like if like someone chopped off part of your ear, you wouldn't hear things correctly at first, and then you'd get used to it after a while. And then there's also like a bunch of psychoacoustic phenomena about, you know, certain sounds. Like if we, you know, try and spatialize a bird at the bottom of the portal, you're not going to be able to hear it down there because we don't have any experience of hearing birds below us. We always hear them above us. So it's a big can of worms, that second part.
Super cool. Thank you.
Cool. Over here on the Zoom chat, Bob Smith is probably going to bring up headphones a bit more if we do some breakout rooms in a bit. But is it Andre? Did you want to go ahead and unmute your microphone and video and ask a question?
Yeah, if it's all right, I'll stay with audio if you guys can hear me all right.
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. First off, Ian, thank you for the presentation. It opened up a portal, no pun intended, to a lot of questions. One question I had is about like experimentation in the AAA industry, because I see a current reoccurring pattern in the industry where sound design relies on a source sound and then gets processed, but it seems to be mostly subtractive in the sense of you filter it down, you cut the mids or the highs or something like that. Is there current experimentations where it's sort of additive and distortive? And let me give you an example. In your in the trailer for 6 Days for Fallujah, there are instances where guns are fired very close to your ear and in enclosed spaces. And in the real world, that sound would be if I'm not correct, very different to what the source sound like. If the recording was done outside, it wouldn't sound anywhere near close to that. Is there currently like filters for that, or AI generated audio that deals with that, so that that intensity can be captured? Because that's 6 Days Fallujah feels like it'd be very intense that way.
Yeah, and I gotta say, before I answer the question, we're like 20 minutes over time now. I'm really enjoying answering the questions, but someone might cut me off soon. So yeah, one thing to keep in mind about 6 Days is like the audio is, it's not like, it's not a simulation, right? We're telling a story. So we're not trying to recreate exactly the physical properties of the gun, how it sounds when it's really close to you or when it's really far away. What we're recreating is the experience that the people had, the stories that they tell us. So there's things that I just do, like with EQ and compression to the source sounds to make them sound a certain way. But there's no kind of like simulation for it, and I'm not using any kind of like AI or anything. Like I've said a couple times now, I'm a designer, and I go by my experience and the experience that I'm trying to create. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess 6 Days of Fallujah was a bad example, because like you said, it's more story based. It was just more of a thought about how sound can be made to match reality in a simulation way. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting question. I don't think I am very qualified to answer it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we're clear on questions on Zoom.
Okay, and I don't
Thanks.
see any more in the room. I really enjoyed giving this talk. It's been so long since I've been to a talk, and so long, and I've just had this stuff floating around my brain for a long time, and I'm really glad that I got a chance to talk about it. So I thank you to everybody in the Zoom chat and everyone here who came. This was so much fun. I hope you had fun too.
Well, thank you, Ian. That was fabulous. In light of the time, I know, Dan, we said we were going to start off with some introductions and then break, but I think we should take a break now. We've been at it for a while. What do you say?
Yes.
So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and at the risk of being overly controlling, and of course my students wouldn't know anything about me being that way, let's keep it to an actual 15 minutes. So 15 minutes from now, I'm going to set a timer. And then the people in the room, we're all going to come back in the room. For you Zoom folks, are we going to do breakout rooms if they want to, Dan?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
So Zoom folks, you'll have breakout rooms if you want to mingle in Zoom world. And we've got do we do the water and cookies now during the break, or we do that?
Yeah,
at-
this is
yeah.
a break
So
function in
through
the
this,
room.
I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So through this door right here, folks in the room, it's the little rec area of the cafe. So we got water and cookies, which is the PNW section tradition for these meetings. Please keep them in there. Don't bring food or drink into this room if you want to. And we can just hang 15 minutes, and then we'll reconvene here. And we'd love to have everybody stay, but if you got to go, you got to go. We're going to do introductions around the room and around the Zoom. Find out who's here. It's a really fun part of the meeting for us. And then if you guys want, Dan and I can talk a little bit about the guts of what we did here today and how we did it. Okay, so see you in 15 minutes.
All right, and everybody on Zoom, you're going to go to rooms.
And one more hand for Ian Shores. That was fabulous, Ian.
All right, people are coming back here. There's still not anybody, not any in-room people, but we can talk. Let me shut this off here so we can see you guys. Okay, so you're seeing me. Somebody talk so we can confirm
Yep.
that we see you.
I can hear you, Dan.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.
Coming
through loud and clear.
Yeah.
All right, here's Janie.
Yeah. Hey, Janie.
It's a little funny the way the room camera says Dan Mortensen, but
Everything says Dan Mortensen.
yeah.
Guess we're back now.
Oh, there's Mac.
Hey, Matt.
Howdy. We're summarily removed from breakout room.
Yeah. Yeah, we kicked everybody out.
Give him the hook.
So Lawrence, are you going to tell folks? Okay, Lawrence is our wrangler today.
Well, I didn't hear any feedback or anything today.
Good.
No, but it seemed to me that the audio from the presenter and the people in the room was lower than most of the other people on Zoom.
I heard some variation in volume, and I don't know if just you get some quiet talkers and so on, or maybe Dan should just goose everyone and use compressors and limiters.
Yeah, you know, John, I didn't. We never went through and set that. So.
I mean, it's not bad, but it's enough to make me reach for the volume control.
Yeah, how's this? Is this any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Oh, okay.
You're still a little softer, quite a bit softer than John is right now. And there were a couple of Zoom talkers who were real loud, and there were some guys asking questions who were real soft. And
what are you gonna do?
I may be turned up too far here.
Yeah, John's too loud, that's for sure. So,
Turn it down a little bit. That's probably better, right?
Well, you can tell the Zoom hasn't been mastered, right? Where is Steve Turnage when we need him?
Did Steve leave us? Did Steve not stay?
he went to the grocery store and he might be back.
Oh, okay.
Too bad
So
he
are we
didn't
back now?
take his phone.
Yeah, we're kind of back.
Okay,
Let's
take it
get
away,
somebody.
Lawrence.
Let's get a long shot of the audience in the room, so our Zoom people knows who's here. So we lost a few at the break, but
All right.
we
Hey,
got
everyone.
the hardcore, right? Right? Yeah. Awesome. And who's out in Zoom land? How are we doing here on?
We've got 16.
Still 16
people.
left. Yeah, so we got about the same. Yeah, about 16 and 16. Dan, do you want to? Should we do our introduction things where everybody
let's do
introduces
that, and then
themselves?
we'll get into hearing people's feedback about what they heard, and if there's stuff you want to know more about what we did.
Yeah, it's been a tradition at these PNW section meetings, and I think on Zoom now too, since we've been in pandemic mode, is to let everybody introduce themselves. So I want to just try this also as a bit of a stress test on our tech here. So let's start with somebody on Zoom, and Jess, you choose people on Zoom, and when you're called, if you would unmute and then give us maybe a 30-second intro about yourself. Keep it short so we can get through everybody, but give us the essentials and tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and we'll alternate between Zoom and in the room. and I'll call on people.
And
here
show
and
your picture too. We like to see you.
All right. Well, to kick intros off via Zoom, Gary, do you want to take the lead?
Okay. I'm Gary DeLuey. I'm in Seattle, Washington. I'm the audio guy at the University of Washington School of Music. I'm the AES Pacific Northwest Section Secretary now and have been for many years. And I'm also on the Tellers Committee for the entire AES that runs the elections. And I'm an AES Life member.
Great. Thanks, Gary. I'll just go here because I'm here. You guys all know I'm Lawrence Schwedler. I'm the director of the music and sound design programs here at Digipen. I'm also the treasurer of the AES PNW Section committee. And the folks that I'm on the committee with here are some of the best and most talented audio folks that I've ever had the chance to know, and it's a real privilege to be with them. So I invite all of you, both in Zoom land and here in the room, consider joining the AES or just show up to our meetings. You don't have to be a member, but you might want to think about it. It's a really cool organization. Jess, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then in the meantime, if maybe in the room, I'll point to you, and would you mind maybe just queuing up at the mic? We can just go one by one. I'm going to start with you, but Jess, you go ahead and queue up somebody to introduce themselves.
All right, here in Zoom land, Dan Mortensen, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm in person. I'm not on Zoom. So get somebody.
We can see you in Zoom, but that's right. You're being counted in person. Okay, John Chester, please go ahead.
Hi there, I'm John Chester. I'm in Cambridge, Maryland. In approximate chronological order, I've done theater, live sound, equipment manufacturer, both for the live sound industry and for broadcast equipment. Done consulting for teleconferencing, networking, acoustic design, and for about the past 15 years, I have been repairing, modifying, and upgrading tape recorders, building equipment for plangent processes, transfers, and doing plangent tape to digital transfers.
Which means what? Plangent.
Plangent processes is a method that recovers the bias signal, or indeed any other continuous signal that's not too badly obscured by audio from an old tape recording, and uses that as a clock signal to remove a great deal of the wow and flutter from the tape recording.
And John and his boss, Jamie Howarth, gave a great presentation to our section in October, which is visible on our website, findable on our website. Sorry to interrupt there. Lawrence.
Our first guest speaker in the room, may we get a camera on Nick?
Sweet. Hi, everybody on Zoom. My name is Nick Sather. It's my first time here. I am currently a freshman in my first semester at Digipen's Bachelor of Arts in Music and Sound Design degree. Just getting my feet wet in audio, although I've played music for a long time. So this is all very exciting, and this talk was really great today. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Jess?
All right, in Zoom land, Bob Smith, please go ahead.
I'm Bob Smith. I'm in Perrineville, Washington, just west of Linwood, and I'm the vice chair this season with the Pacific Northwest AES, and I've been around for a couple of years. I'm also a principal scientist of acoustic systems at Stryker Emergency Care. What I do there is the audio systems for the medical devices, and in particular, psychoacoustic enhancements of voice prompts such that the devices can be audible in noisy environments with it than without it. And I also have my own Soundsmith Labs where as I'm semi-retired, doing my own research, continuing on with psychoacoustics.
Thank you, Bob.
Hello, everyone. Micah Hayes. I am a music technology professor, and I run the music production program at Seattle Pacific University here in Seattle. Been here about a year and a half, although I was originally from Ventura, California. I'm an audio engineer and a composer, and I've worked at places like New World Symphony and Aspen Music Festival and the Banff Center for the Arts, and taught at UT Arlington for about 12 years. And yeah, anyway. This is great. I'm really excited about this. This is my first Even though I've been here in Seattle about a year and a half, so it's my first in-person meeting with the AES Pacific Northwest chapter. This is fantastic, very impressive, and good work all around. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Micah. Jess?
Awesome, thanks. Janie Wallach.
Hi, I'm Janie Wallach, and I occasionally record live music. It's very occasionally now because there's still, things aren't quite back to normal yet. And although there's a lot of live music, it's more DJs than anything, it seems, and or bands I don't record. So I recorded a band last weekend though from Japan. So you know, who knows? Maybe it's starting to get back together, but I don't want to say, you know, what that's going to look like even next month, much let alone next year.
Thanks, Janie. I'll add to that in past years, in pre-pandemic years, seems like a lifetime ago, Janie would often get volunteers from Digipen to assist at live shows in Seattle, and I'm hoping that once the pandemic is over or becomes thoroughly manageable and we actually do live concerts again, that we can get that up. It was a great experience for our students to be able to work with Janie on running live shows.
I'd really welcome that, Lawrence, because especially even at the last show, I think one of the students would have benefited from that, because my friend Charles actually did a video of it as well, and they could have seen all of that happening. So.
Yeah, we were just talking today, the crew that worked with us on this thing, the Sound Lab team and the Sound Lab manager, the experience they get running actual things, it's just different than what you get even in a cool program like ours. When you actually have to do this stuff, right? That's how you learn audio engineering, is actually schlepping the cables, plugging in the things, dealing with the feedback and all that. We got in the room here, we've got Chris Sabin. Chris, talk to us.
Hello, I'm Chris Sabin, a sound designer. I graduated here from Digipen with a Bachelor of Arts in Music and Sound Design, and now I'm a music and sound design teacher teaching high school students through the WANIC program here at Digipen.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris has been running a great program. We adapted the sound design program into the WANIC program, which is the Washington Innovative Careers. Anyway, it's a cool program where high school kids get actual high school credit in the Lake Washington School District to attend some classes, and Chris is running a fabulous music and sound design course for them. Jess?
Cool, great. Next up, we've got Gordon McGregor.
Hi there, I'm Gordon McGregor. I live in Glasgow, United Kingdom. What do I do? Yesterday I was running around doing Christmas light switch-ons with sound and Santa and whatever else. The week, 2 days before that, I had some fairly heavy-duty government ministers from around the world on a Zoom call, hybrid meeting, not unlike what we're having right now. So varied in many things with audio and sound and video and just anything basically in production side of things.
I have to add to that, Gordon, for the people here who don't know, that you were instrumental in helping us put this meeting together. Gordon, I think, Dan, isn't it correct that Gordon first joined us with your Tea Time Topics meetings?
Yeah, that's right.
It's the April meeting, wasn't it? The first online one we did, I thought.
Yeah, one of the very
Mixing
first,
on
if not
glass.
the first, and it really sort of highlights the whole sort of impetus behind this meeting, which was the advantage of being able to work with somebody like Gordon McGregor and us to be able to literally work together. If it hadn't been for the pandemic, I don't mean to justify the horror, but if it hadn't been for that misfortune, we wouldn't have probably been forced into this mode where we all, as a world, or at least some of us, had to all of a sudden adopt, teleconferencing technology in a way that, the technology had been around for years, but not many of us were really using it. And so because of that, we got to hang with Gordon, and Gordon helped a lot on advising us how to do this. So thank you. Axel,
Sure.
Talk to us.
Hi, everybody. My name's Axel McCrum. I'm a senior BMSD currently in this program at Digipen. And recently, I've actually been taken under Ian Shore's wing at Highwire as the audio design intern. It's been a great experience, learning a lot really quickly and kind of getting my foot in the door, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Axel.
Thank you.
Jess?
All right, next up, we've got Mac Perkins. Mac, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mac Perkins. I'm up in Whidbey Island, Washington, north of Seattle a bit. And I've done a number of things, from mechanic and theater, worked in broadcast for a bit, was in the Navy for 4 years. Came back out, started my own company doing both consumer and commercial audio systems. And one thing or another, started 2 companies, and currently I own Pacific Studio, which is a event and museum exhibit fabrication company. Been doing that for the last 40 odd years. So.
And Mac, it's obvious that you're an audio professional because you sound great. whatever mic setup you got there, it's just clear as
This is a little bio ribbon and a Sound Devices USB pre.
Yeah, it sounds
so
really
reasonable.
Good. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Here in the room, Noah.
Hey, I'm Noah Lodoff. I'm a junior BA MSD here at Digipen. Currently working on a game where you fight Spartan mechs. It's pretty cool.
Cool. Thank you, Noah. Jess?
All right, so now we've got some folks with their cameras off. Florin, are you able to turn your camera on? Hi, then go for it.
Hi guys, I'm Florin Marcoux. I am not an audio guy. I'm a noise and vibration guy. I used to work for heavy equipment manufacturers and trucking companies. I'm in Redmond, Washington. Yeah, I like to lurk around and learn more from you guys. You guys do all this stuff live, and I always work in post-processing land where I record data and try to make machines and equipment sound better for the driver and the operator inside. So it's more on the noise and vibration side than the audio side, but it's still really interesting to get a different perspective on things.
Cool. Thanks, Florin. Eric.
Hello, my name is Eric Lubon Gunderson. I'm a sophomore here at Digipen in my second year of the BAMSD program. I've been working on my first game. It's been really great. I love every second of it. Yeah, so hello.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, we've got quite a strong showing of Digipen students today. I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that I told my students I would give them extra credit if they showed up tonight. Jess, who you got for us?
All right, next up we've got August McCoven. August, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself?
He's in the room here.
Oh, okay. So I see him up on Zoom. And then there's Ian. Is that Ian in the room as well?
That was our Ian who left.
Yeah, but he's
Okay.
doing an interview with.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I'll keep moving. Jinda, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself? Jinda? Maybe. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. And then I've got Lawrence Swedler. I see you up there. Bill, are you available? There you are.
Not really, but it's past my bedtime out here on the East Coast. So, yeah, I'm outside of Philadelphia. I'm a lifer of AES, SPE, and ATOS. And right now, I'm basically handling the archives for Broadcast Pioneers of Philadelphia and the American Theater Organ Society. So it keeps me off the streets at night.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. How'd you hear about our meeting?
Through AES.
Awesome.
And then the tea time and stuff.
Oh, tea time, right? Yeah. Dan's tea time topics has been quite the connecting space for us here. Anybody in the room who hasn't introduced themselves? Shawnee, did you want to come up and say hi since you were so kind to be here?
Hello, I'm Shawnee. I'm also a graduate from BMSD program here at Digipen. I think I graduated 4 to 5 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago. I'm an audio designer at Microsoft Mixed Reality team. We make lots of experience for VR, AR, XR experience. And on weekends, I also do translation for Audio Kinetic, which is a company that makes Wise, the middleware for games and interactive audio. I did translations for their English documents to Korean, so we can approach more Korean people.
Thank you, Shani. Yeah, great.
I'm the last Zoom person here, I believe. So just quickly, my name is Jesper, primarily a live sound engineer for the past 18 years, also a tour manager, production manager for major label artists worldwide. Came from Minneapolis, ended up in the Pacific Northwest, thankfully, and am now a proud committee member of the Audio Engineering Pacific Northwest Section. I'm currently in Minnesota visiting and checking in with family over the winter and kind of working on a COVID pivot, looking into broadcasts perhaps, and got some cool things in the works, but just really happy to be here and be a part of this incredible meeting. So thanks to everyone here. Good to see you.
Thank you, Jess.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Dixon.
Hello again. I'm Greg Dixon, and I'm Assistant Professor of Music and Sound Design here at Digipen, and I teach junior level composition and sound design and game audio production courses. And as I mentioned earlier, I am currently serving as the chair of the Pacific Northwest section of the Audio Engineering Society, and that's me.
Great. There's some of you in the back. I'm not wearing my glasses. I quit wearing them since I had to start wearing a mask. So, oh, Lars, come on and yeah. And then Thomas, did you want to come? You might as well. And Harrison, do you want to, since you're here? It's kind of nice. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but it's nice that you're all here. You come and introduce yourself. Go ahead.
I'm Lars. I'm a Digipen alum, music and sound design. I don't really want to think about how many years it's been since I graduated. It's been a while, but I thought today would be a nice day to come see some old friends and learn about audio. So.
Thank you, Lars. Thanks for coming. Good to see you, man. Thomas.
Hello, I'm Thomas Parrish. I am also an alumni of the Bachelor of Arts in Music and Sound Design program here at Digipen. Currently, I'm working as a technical sound designer at Formosa Interactive Seattle. So we take on various clients who need audio for their games, and as a technical sound designer, I handle audio content creation as well as audio implementation.
Cool. Are you? Do they have you doing any music, or is it mostly sound design over there?
Mostly sound design, but I've done some music implementation as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Harrison, I think you're the last person in the room who hasn't introduced themselves.
Oh boy, I'm Harrison Gerald Jones. I'm a junior music and sound design student here at Digipen. And I feel like I'm still just kind of getting my feet wet, but I'm enjoying it and looking forward to other ways to apply what I learned. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
It's great having you, Harrison. Thanks for stepping up.
Florence, let's meet our wonderful crew also.
Yeah, let's introduce the crew. Come on down, guys.
Call them out too.
We'll start with the leader of the crew.
Yeah. Hello. I am August McCubbin. I am the Sound Lab Manager here at Digipen and also a recent graduate of Digipen. And I've been leading the wonderful crew that you will
Come on,
meet
crew.
now.
You can all get on
running
camera.
this thing with Dan and Lawrence.
Yeah, so August just joined us in the summer as our Sound Lab Manager, so he's a full-time staff member now at Digipen, so he works with the faculty to run our program. And we always hire a number of our students from both programs to work as technical assistants. And the first one here is Michelle.
Yes, my name is Michelle Mayer. I'm a senior BA MSc student, still working on game projects, applying to lots of things. I'm happy to have put this here and see all the tall people try to bend over. So I'm sorry for that, but thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Hi, I am Jonathan Larson, freshman BA MSD. I also transplanted to the Pacific Northwest from Minneapolis just this last summer. just starting again, going back to school after a couple years, and it's been good so far. And I've been enjoying being on the Sound Lab team.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Ben Schwedler. I'm a junior BSc SDA, Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Digital Audio here at Digipen. I'm helping out with the Sound Lab team. I'm in charge of the in-room video mixing. Yeah, this is my first AES meeting I'm attending. I know Lawrence pretty well. So
I have seen you somewhere, haven't I, Ben? Yeah,
just a bit.
Mm.
But yeah, it's cool to finally be here for real, and yeah, not just on the periphery. So.
Yeah, awesome, Ben. Thank you. Jarek.
Yeah, I'm Jarek Akawili. I'm a junior BSc SDA. I like being part of the sound team, and for this event, I've been one of the cameramen, and I've just been having a good time setting things up and being at this event.
Thank you, Jarek. I have to say, these 5, August and his 4 team members, and Dan and myself and Gary, this is our 3rd Sunday in a row. This morning we started at 10 a.m. and last 2 Sundays we started, I think, at 11 or 12. And these guys have really been working hard to make all this work. But it's really the brainchild of Dan Mortensen. And I'm hoping, Dan, you do have a camera on you so we could see you, can't we?
Yeah.
So this is sort of Dan's show. So fabulous work, Dan. So tell us about what the heck, what was this all about and why?
Well, the goal was to try to get the in-room people's experience to match the Zoom people's experience and vice versa. And I'm curious, how did it work? I would like to know people's thoughts about if there was something we did good or something we could have done better or what. I mentioned earlier that I wasn't happy with the presentation part of this, and I didn't mean Ian's part. I meant the screen here where there's all of this crap up here and all of this crap down below here. I don't
Dan
like
is
that.
a perfectionist. We've all learned that about Dan over the last 3 weeks, if we didn't already know it. So at every step of the way, Dan is saying, how do we make this better? You know,
Well, I would like to say that I really appreciate what you've done, Dan, and I'm still very leery of being in person given COVID, and yet I feel like I hardly missed anything. You managed the cameras really well, and the views and the sound, and I really feel like I was pretty much there with you, other than I'm not.
That's great. And I'm looking at the screen now, and August figured out how to get 3 of us up there simultaneously, which is just awesome.
One thing I'm curious about is what did the people in the room see? Because, of course, those of us on Zoom don't really know that.
Let's show camera 1 here and back up, Jarek, so that we're seeing the room. And spotlight camera 1, I guess, maybe, so that people online can see. There's 2 screens up front, which are always here in Digipen. And we use the left screen. Just take me away and put just that one up there, please. So in normal times, the presenter's video laptop is on both screens. And we've divided them up for here so that we could make the people on Zoom be big size. So how do we get a person on Zoom? I guess I'm on Zoom. So
well,
me, please. Go ahead. John? You were
no,
gonna
what was on Zoom was the room, which is what we were seeing on the screen. But now you're
but
on.
I wanted you to see on, well, I guess you can't because I'm on it now. So,
correct.
yeah, go back to the thing there. So you can
Well,
see.
you can see thumbnails across the top.
Yeah, but that's a Zoom thing.
Yeah.
In the room here, we were seeing the right-hand screen, which is on the right side of your screen now, seeing the person full size.
Yeah, so.
On the right there, and Lawrence is pointing to it, that's the right.
We can get some recursive video going here. We get that
Yeah.
cool psycho tunnel, of video feedback.
Yeah, but we weren't getting feedback during the presentation. We were getting the full screen stuff. And then Ian's presentation was on the left side, where Lawrence is now. What else?
Yeah, so for us, the experience here was you guys would fill that screen. I know I'm not supposed to talk about things that could have been that we don't like, or not that I'm not supposed to talk about. I don't want to highlight the things that went wrong, but one of the things that we knew going into this was far from ideal was the quality of the projectors in this room, and they're really crap. I'm sorry, they just are. But if we actually had laser projectors here, that would be, if I was going to put my money somewhere in this thing, that would jack up this whole experience, so that these two images on these two big screens would be just bright and clear, even if the room were fully lit. So we spent a lot of time messing around with lighting, kind of in a sort of a makeshift way to try to get it better, and this is as well as we could do. But I think proof of concept was proved that with good projectors here, when you guys in Zoomland talk, you're big on the screen, and because of Dan's great sound, you sound, there's no difference between what the people in the room sound like and what you in Zoom sound like, assuming you're...
Yeah, you're in the room, as for all intents and purposes.
So I think that really worked really well.
One thing I might point out is, no matter how good your projector is, you still got to control the light on the screen.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no other answer for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is difficult in this space without
I can see that.
a considerable amount of work.
Well, if the projector is bright enough, it certainly helps.
Yes, no question about it. But you still...
I mean, if you had a 12,000 lumen projector in there, it would probably work just fine with that room light.
Well, they're taking donations, John.
Right. We actually did spec that out some years ago, and unfortunately, not surprisingly, we got shot down. But there's the new.
They're cheaper now.
They're cheaper, and the projector technology, I believe it's a laser technology. It's not. It's something crazy, and the demo that we saw was phenomenal. I mean, you could have the room pretty much fully lit, and the screen was just. It was fantastic. But anyway, I don't need to harp on that. But I think with that improvement, it would really further diminish the sort of the disparity between the remote and the on-site.
So did anybody ever put together a diagram showing the audio routing and interconnection between both the in-the-room and the Zoom?
Michelle here is saying yes.
But it's much more difficult to create that. None of us are, whatever it is who does that. None of us are whoever that is, and there are a million things going back and forth. I made a list of my outputs and inputs on one side of the page and where they were going on the other side of the page. So I'm able to patch this together again and again and again, but there's certainly nothing to publish that would be meaningful to somebody.
We did try to document it, and we do still plan to do that. Who was that? Was that Mac? Were you Mac Perkins?
Mac was going to jump in.
Yeah, I assume it's being done mostly in the box.
No way. There's wires all over the place.
Oh my gosh, there's wires all over the place.
I've got at least 1,000 feet of wire here.
Yeah, 4 video cameras.
In a lot of places.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Audio monitors, or 8, 5 wireless mic, no, 6
4 computers connected to this, a webcam, a switcher.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the video side, not being a video guy.
6.
Yeah, it's way more complicated.
Monitors. Each. Can we point at Jarek? Point up front at Jonathan.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, that's a great idea.
Jonathan, take off that cover. I made some duct line for people to be hiding behind.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
That's right. That's right.
So there's a camera there with a video monitor, and he and Michelle are seeing the program that is going out of the switcher.
Uh-oh,
now we're going to get
video.
a big...
Let's get some video feedback.
Yeah, so that they can see if it's active. We don't have any headset here to tell them to hold still or anything, but they can see what's being shown on screen. And so there's wires going back and forth.
You know, Dan, it's worth highlighting that you were running one Zoom, the master Zoom session. Is it fair to characterize it that way?
Sure.
On your computer?
Sure.
And then
On one
August
computer.
is also running a Zoom session as a co-host. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, he's doing spotlights.
So August's sole responsibility on Zoom was to control spotlight, which is, you know, when the yellow frame gets around the square and then yeah.
So Ben is waving.
And so we could control who was in the big square on this, and because that was what you would see on the screen. And then Ben is controlling the video switcher. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
he's picking the camera or the computer, Ian's computer, to show.
And what is the camera and what is the video interconnect?
Say again?
What is the camera and what is the connection method from the camera to the switcher?
Thanks to Gordon's advice, it's fiber optic HDMI going around, and I can.
So
I
you
took some pictures, but I don't know if I want to
four
see
video
all of it.
cameras, all with fiber optic HDMI. Jarek, could you zoom into Michelle over here? Michelle, go ahead and take your.
Well, zoom into Jonathan because that's closer. He's going to get a
Well, I
better
just
shot
wanted them
from
to
this
see
side.
that there's a whole second camera over here that's just like
Yeah,
Jonathan's now
right.
on the duck blind here. So
Right.
that's over here, and Michelle's hiding behind.
So you can August solo us here.
There we go. So this is a whole nother
Spotlight Jarek. Or
an
spotlight
entire
Jarek.
second station. Thank you, Michelle. And then, so that's 1, 2, and then Jarek is the one whose feed that you're seeing. Oh, there's Jarek, yeah, back there by the control room. I guess and then there's a fourth, just a webcam on Dan's station.
No, the fourth one is between the speakers in the middle behind the banner, and that's getting a wide shot.
So this is
Jarek, shoot into that
This
center.
is the wide shot that's catching the room from the
Pick up
from
camera
the front.
1. Yeah, go to the middle. There you go. Now zoom way in. So there's 2 speakers in the middle there. The left one, in our view, is the right side of the stereo PA, and the right speaker is the Zoom-only audio. So we're localizing people on Zoom next to the camera there, or the screen rather. And can you zoom in a little more on the camera? It's just a fixed shot. There's no operator up there, but it's giving us a wide shot, this shot here, of the room, so that we have something before the people up front zero in on whoever it was that would be talking.
So this is a little more like what you might, sort of a simplified version of how they broadcast a football game. You know, there's the row of monitors, there's the line mixer, and then the line producer is shouting out the call, okay, cut to this camera, cut to that.
No shouting here.
No shouting, though. It was
No.
all very, very measured and very calm.
Whispering and hand signals.
Yeah.
And
Any
also
other
no
questions?
feedback. There was no feedback, and yet you've got monitoring systems going in multiple directions here.
Oh my
I think
God.
a diagram of how this was put together would be beneficial to other sections who might want to replicate what you gentlemen have accomplished, and ladies and gentlemen
That's
have accomplished today.
proprietary information.
That's why I was thinking about what you were doing in a box, because it's basically a bunch of mix minus buses.
Say again, Mac.
I assume you just got a bunch of mix minus buses. So
Yeah.
you have the stuff from the room that gets fed out to Zoom.
Yeah. I have
And-
a problem with mix minus, so I have what's there and what's not there.
Well, that's
wrap my
sort of
head-
what it is.
I know, but I can't wrap my head around the concept of mix minus.
I guess that's
What really throws a monkey wrench into it for me is dealing with Zoom itself, because one of the things Zoom does, which we depended on, is its auto spotlighting features. So, and we wanted that when you guys just talk, or I guess I can't tell what's going on anymore. I don't know how much of this is Ben and the crew switching with the video switcher versus Zoom just saying, oh, this guy's talking, let's highlight him and put him in the spotlight. But those two things working together get kind of complicated pretty quickly. And then also the audio feeds, right? The way that they work in and out of Zoom and the way they work in and out with the live mics in the room. It's
Let me
just crazy.
address that a little bit. There's two switches. Ben just pointed out that there's two switchers in the room here. There's the physical switcher that is selecting between the cameras and computer, and then there's the Zoom switcher, which is switching amongst people on Zoom who are talking. So everything, every visual source in the room here is going into the thing labeled Dan Mortensen computer, and when we talk, that's what is seen. Anything in the room comes up here on this, wherever it is.
Right. So I would assume that the person who's doing the Zoom control wants to have a monitor that shows the output of the room video switcher and another monitor that shows Zoom.
Not quite. The person. Yeah, we can't hear you, but Lawrence, would you bring back that microphone or somebody? There's a handheld. Yeah, that one will work. So here, go ahead now. Go ahead, it's on.
Is it on? There we go. So yeah, I'm sitting in the back corner here. You guys got a few shots of our command station, but I can see what the switcher is doing.
Can you get a
August,
camera?
you've got a solo, you got a PFL
There we
us.
Yeah, so
spotlight, spotlight.
The fun part about this is making it so that the screen in here is displaying what the camera is seeing as well, because Zoom's auto thing won't display that to us because that's our voice and video line, so it's not going to show us our own video unless I manually do that. But some other fun things that I've been doing is like pinning Dan, because Dan's audio is coming through Dan Mortensen, but his video is coming through Dan Mortensen too. So in order to have Dan on screen for anybody when he's talking, I need to manage that.
Yeah, this has been great having multiple people doing stuff. I was trying to do it myself, and Gordon and Bob pointed out that you're an idiot if you try to do that, and that was true.
Yeah.
So this has worked out much better, having multiple people doing stuff. And that's why there's a big television crew when there's a television shoot. There's a bunch of people. Each one is doing a thing. One person isn't doing everything. Go ahead, August. Or Ben, do you want to say something about what you're seeing? Tell them what you're seeing on that TV next to you. I don't know that they'll be able to see it.
I mean, I tried to point the screen towards
Zoom in anymore?
The camera, but I don't know. I'm in charge of mixing all the different cameras in the room, and I just control which one is going to zoom at any time. So
just tell us what each of the panes on that screen are.
Sure.
Because I see two big ones on the top, four little ones underneath, and a bunch of blank ones on the bottom.
Yeah, so you can see there's the main two, which are the one on the upper right. This one here is
camera one and camera two?
No.
No.
Say it.
So the one in the upper right is what's currently going to Zoom. And then these small 4 cameras are what the current 4 cameras in the room are currently displaying. So camera 1 is the one that Jarek's on.
Back here.
Right.
And it's pointed at where Ian was at Lawrence currently.
That's Professor Schwedler to you, but go on.
Camera 2 right here, that's the wide angle shot. That's at the front of the room. Camera 3 is at Michelle over by Lawrence, who's pointing at the left audience mic, and then camera 4 over here is the one that Jonathan's at, and that's pointing at the right audience mic, which is currently pointed at me.
And what's the other large pane on the top?
On the left.
That one, yes.
That's the preview, so when I'm switching between the different views, there's what's currently displaying, and then there's what the next potential shot is. So
Okay.
cut
Got it.
between the two, it just
Right.
what I cut to, basically.
It's the
And are the
next
blanks
thing.
at the bottom places where you could plug in other cameras that you don't have?
Yeah, originally, a week ago, we had a 5th camera or a 6th camera for.
Yeah, Ian's computer was one of them, so that was a source. This is a 8-input mixer, video mixer switcher, and it comes with 4 HDMI inputs and 4 SDI inputs, and I got adapters to make it all HDMI inputs. So there's 8 sources, whether it's computer or camera or whatever, as long as it's an HDMI source, it can go into that thing, and you can pick. So yeah, there's other possibilities there.
One of the cool things you can do to get round Dan's horror of the Zoom, headers and footers and whatever, if you want to get rid of that, is largely put the video. The only time you're going to get that is when you highlight Zoom. Though I think sometimes some computers, when you set it out for Zoom to transmit onto a second screen, as if it was like a PowerPoint presentation style, where you've got your notes on one screen and then the actual presentation goes out on the second output. Sometimes the computer will lose a lot of that because it keeps the control stuff on the main screen. It's worth experimenting with it. It doesn't seem to work with every computer, but it seems to work with some. At the very least, it minimizes the pains. And then the other thing it's quite useful to have if you're doing this is a video mixer with an auxiliary video out, so that you can actually you can put stuff up on the screen. If you've only got one screen and not two like what these guys have, you can put Zoom stuff up or just the in-room presentation up on the screen without getting the video feedback or the time tunnel or whatever.
The other thing I find is that on a Mac, if I make Zoom full screen, that I can minimize the gallery, and then I have one image with very little distraction in it.
Yep, that's right. You can take it down, minimize the gallery, and push it right up into the corner. It disappears. It just leaves you with the bottom controls, which is probably enough anyway, really. Everybody's used to seeing that on Zoom now, so it's no secret.
Yeah, that's not so bad. It's definitely a better view than seeing the whole gallery most of the time, I think.
Especially if there's a presentation on the go.
Yeah.
And that works on the PC too here. There's another PC running Zoom with no audio or video input to it, but it's for the presenter to see what's going on in Zoom. And I just did what you suggested, Mac, and went full screen and then minimized the gallery. Or keep the gallery, on a strip.
Or you can keep it open if you want. Yeah,
and it's actually, it makes good use of the real estate, especially if you have something like an 18-inch, 17-inch monitor here. So,
right.
Yeah.
The cool thing, one of the great things about Zoom for this type of work, that I've not used Teams much, especially not the current versions of it, but one of the great things about Zoom is its echo cancelling feature, which is like built into it, and it just works. Is definitely a lot better than any of the other systems, I think, because it defaults to that. I think also, that it does the sort of automatic clean feed thing coming back and forth. It very, very rarely do you get any trouble from remote ins with feedback, unless somebody's been really silly with a phone or something like that.
Yeah.
So really, you've just got to watch the room stuff, which is a bit of a mind game, but you get there eventually with the clean feeds and thing. I think Dan was struggling with that a little bit, but once you get your head around it, it's something you can keep stored on a digital disk and just have it running all the time and just use it all the time that way. I've had up to 40 microphones in a room with a Zoom meeting recently, and the auto mixer was working overtime, I have to say. And I never did find out who it was, but there was somebody on the table chatting away on a computer almost continuously and kept tripping the auto mixer, but I found the mic channel eventually and muted it, but I never found the actual person. They might have lost a few fingers if I'd gotten hold of them, but that's the kind of thing you end up having to watch for when you're doing these kind of things.
The weird thing for me has been that I discovered last week that I go to original sound on, meaning there's none of that processing going, And I forgot to turn it off last week for a couple hours and realized that it wasn't going, but we had no feedback. It's on original sound now.
Yeah, it always works, Dan. The echo cancel thing just works regardless whether it's original on or original not. It's
Okay.
how it handles the way the audio comes back and forth. It's not really the audio's original sound. I think is the processing of how it handles the bit rate, if you like, of the sound. But the echo cancellation thing seems to be always on.
I think the original sound turns off the noise cancellation on the local feed, but not the echo cancellation.
Yeah, I think it
that's
only
right.
affects the transmission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever it is, it's very, very clever, and it's one of the nice features of Zoom. And it's very useful, and also the way it handles these, bringing up the pictures, of the head, the person that's speaking or whatever else, is really useful as well. Because doing a multi-camera shot where you're having to keep track of everybody's feeds and all the rest of it, I've done one of those, and that ain't fun at all. You know what I mean? So this thing being sent more or less automatic, yeah, it can be irritating sometimes, but believe me, it's a hell of a lot easier doing that
Yeah.
than 40 odd feeds coming in and trying to work out who the heck's talking and get them on.
Yeah, I've used a lot of other systems that work a lot worse than this one.
Yep,
Yeah,
I couldn't
for
agree
all
more.
its faults, it's pretty good. Go ahead, whoever that was.
How about folks in the room? Any thoughts on your experience of this? I have, I think me and probably Dan and the crew, or at least me and Dan, we're also looking at a Zoom screen. So for you, unless you had your phone running with the sound off and the video off, just so you could see the Zoom meeting in your hand, you're dependent on what you see on our screens here. So any thoughts on what would increase immersion or what, just any observations? If not, that's fine. I just, no, it's just going.
You got to
Yeah.
go to a microphone if you have a thought.
They're just all nodding and giving me thumbs up and saying, you're great, you don't do anything.
I'll say it officially, it was fantastic. Like, the sound was really good. Like all the sound was perfectly balanced in the house, and no feedback, no loops, like all the kind of stuff that is very difficult in this kind of hybrid situation was avoided. You could hear everything clearly. Both screens were really nice. It was cool to see one screen with the presentation and the other one with the Zoom faces. It was pretty perfect all around as far as like the in-house experience. So yeah, just hats off to everyone who worked on this because it was fantastic.
Thank you, Micah.
Thanks, Micah.
I was fishing for that, so thanks for delivering.
It really does work remarkably well. The only thing I noticed was that the sound from the live participants seems a little quieter than those of us on Zoom.
Okay. You mean the guest mics here in the room where they
all of the stuff originating there.
Yeah, I think we never went through and balanced that.
By about 4 dB, according to my handy dandy device here.
Okay.
See, that's the thing about working with a bunch of audio engineers. They're going to tell you not only that it was off, but how many dB it was off by.
Right.
Still down? So here, try this. Is this better?
Okay.
Hello,
so
hello,
now
hello.
We're talking. Yeah, we're all talking.
Yeah, Lawrence,
here.
talk.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Sounds like you're getting louder in the space there, Dan, but not here. Almost sounds like we're hearing you through another mic.
Nope, that's the send to the computer. I didn't change anything here.
Well, you suddenly got more reverberant.
Do you have Zoom set to do automatic level control?
No, it's on original sound, and I believe that all you're hearing is our mics getting louder, and so you're hearing more echo stuff. Why am I seeing a microphone in the air here? Is that a signal? Is that mic off or on? Yeah.
I think this mic is on.
Okay, so we could have been hearing that. So
well, it's an interesting question whether automatically adjust microphone volume in Zoom gets turned off when you go to original sound or not. I have no idea.
I think it gets at least
you can manually
reduced
control that.
Because we get, I mean, when we've been doing people originating audio on the tea time sessions, when you go to original sound, you get more dynamic range. So it is reducing the processing at least.
So I had two open mics here that I wasn't paying attention to. Now it's just me and Lawrence. How is
Yeah,
that?
so we're talking, Dan and me.
That cleans up the reverberation quite a bit, but it's not reverberation so much as just level.
So you say we're still not as loud as you guys on Zoom?
Right.
Yeah, and a couple of Zoom people seem a lot louder than others. Like Mac's pretty loud. And John Chester's pretty loud to me on Zoom.
So that's the other thing that, you know, we've all seen even on just plain old Zoom calls, which is you're always at the mercy of, you know, each individual user's settings. And of course, when you're having a meeting of audio engineers, it's one thing, but when you're having a meeting of just, you know, people who are just hanging, you know, there for a Zoom meeting, and, you know, you just get, right? You just get anything. You get these horrible, tingly, reverberant spaces, and you can't understand what they're saying.
Yeah, well, or people on laptops who are typing.
Yeah.
As far as level, I've just set up the meter in Zoom preferences so that I'm heading right up to the top of the green and not over.
It's just about exactly what I did.
Right.
Okay, and
Which
how
is
are
what-
we now? How are we now compared to you? And only those people on Zoom can tell us this. We can't hear here.
Right.
No difference to me.
I don't think.
Still a little soft from the live room there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But this takes it out,
Well, yep. You went away.
Takes it away.
Yeah, so that's the...
I wonder if some auto correction that's going on in Zoom or something.
The other interesting thing, Dan, is that the live stuff appears to be coming in stereo.
Good. That was intentional.
Okay.
Right, and I believe that is original sound, right? I don't think you'll get stereo. Will you get stereo if you're not on original sound?
I don't remember.
I think that's
so.
one of the things original.
If you go into the audio settings, there are a whole slew of options, and you can manually select and deselect each one of these things you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And clearly original sound is stereo. Whether the rest of it is stereo, I tried to figure that out the other day. And I read a bunch of documents on Zoom, and it said it had something to do with whether you had an enterprise account or something like that. And I just went, "Oy, I can't figure this out."
You have to enable stereo in your Zoom audio preference.
Yeah, that was the other thing.
Right, right. It's a preference. That's
But certain accounts didn't have that option.
Are there other things people want to talk about other than audio? Oh, I've got you muted. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, as part of the setup crew for this whole thing, and for the in-person equipment, I mean, I'm just a student, and I haven't done work like this before, but the sheer amount of equipment and the setup.
Camera 4 here.
And the fact that
Who's our switcher? Who's our switcher?
Switch
to camera 4. There you go. There you go. Go ahead.
But just the sheer amount of stuff to set up and the amount of organization it takes to plan this and to be able to set it up so efficiently. We got set up in like an hour today. And like when 2 weeks ago it was like 3 or 4. Yeah, it was like 4 hours to set up, and just wanted to thank Dan for being so organized and letting us use his resources.
Well,
you're here.
Dan?
I say a round of applause for Dan Mortensen.
Do you want to see something that'll save you a lot of time? Spin around here, Jarek, so you can point at me, because I can't. It won't go that way? Okay, here, let me just grab my webcam.
There, we've got you.
Can you see this?
Who's that?
No, you're not going to be able to see it. Tune to this thing here, if you can. I bundled all of these cables together. This is going to the front of the room. There's 3 Ethernet cables and 5, 6, 7 HDMI cables, and we pull this out at one rather than pulling it out as 7 different things, and you go 7 times faster doing that. The first week it was all individual cables, and then since then it's been a bundle, and I'm not going to tell you how much time it took to do 200 feet. of
Oh.
stuff put together at most. It's 100 to 200.
Dan,
Yes.
having known and worked with Dan for quite a number of years, this is exactly what he does very, very well. Really, I mean, he spends a lot of time figuring out how to package stuff and deploy it so it can be done efficiently.
Yeah, you're at the gig, and that's when the time is of the essence. And if you spend 6 or 10 or 12 hours ahead of time getting it together, and you're saving 20 or 30 person hours at the gig, you're way ahead of the game. And that kind of mindless work is important, and I feel I'm fully qualified for mindless work. That's a bonus.
Well, I'll mention to you all that I think Greg mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that in January, well, there's the meeting in December with Sylvia Massia. That's going to be exclusively online, so that'll just be a Zoom meeting. But in January, we're going to have J.J. Johnston, and we're going to see if we can, and Greg, you don't know this, but I talked with Dan about this, and he thinks it can be done in a simplified fashion. It won't be this cool, but it'll still be good. So we're going to try to pare this down to something that incorporates some of your built-in gear here in the room, so we don't have to bring as much stuff, and see if we can do JJ's meeting as also a hybrid meeting, but with less, hopefully, less setup. So that's going to be sometime in January, so stay tuned to the PNW Section website for information about that.
Any other questions or comments about how this went or could have gone?
I'm very impressed. I mean, really, I think it's great that we can do something like this, where you get both people in the room and those of us that are remote interacting.
It's awesome being with you here in this. It's awesome being together, and it's awesome being together with people who aren't even here. I mean, this is just great. I've had a blast.
I like Bob Smith about please document if possible. I don't want to put Ben and August and the crew on the spot, but even if we get some of this down in some kind of form where we can digest it, you know, from the paper somehow, I think that would be useful. But this is an ongoing process, so my agenda on this is that not just JJ's meeting in January, but we'll have the Digipen Audio Symposium, which will be in probably early May. And then this coming August will be the AES International Conference on Audio for Virtual and Augmented Reality. It's going to be in person here at Digipen again on August 15th through 17th. And Dan will be, unless things change and we alienate him, Dan will be running sound for that meeting as well. So we're gonna have more than one bite at the apple on this, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Guys, if you want, I'll try and draw out what I was doing last week with the video and stuff. It's very similar to what you're doing there. Maybe not the speaker setup, because I didn't do two separate speaker setups, because you've got the stereo thing there and the thing for the Zoom. I just purely had one pair of speakers, but I could probably, by using the Alan Heath software, I could probably draw one out and set up a little bit, because Alan Heath's desk can also appear as a computer program. I can probably do some screen captures and try and document what those are. I think I can probably do the same thing for my video mixer, because it also has a computer simulation as well. If you want, I'll try and do that, save you guys.
That would be fabulous, Gordon.
Yeah, I'd like to.
It might take me a little while to do it, but I'll give it a shot if I can.
What it looks like, what a drawing of this.
Send around some documentation. We'll be happy to critique it.
I'm sure you will, yeah. I promise to make many spelling mistakes. But yeah, it's one of those things. Once you've done them a couple of times, I'm not going to say they are never straightforward. You never ever try and set up a thing like this in 30 seconds, no matter how many times you've done it.
Yeah.
I had to do a live stream last night. Yesterday, all of a sudden, I got asked to do it, so I literally had to call into the office and pick up cameras and an encoder, and it still took me. Then we didn't. The thing that caught us out yesterday, for example, was the meeting codes. The access codes to transmit the meeting out on, or the the show out onto the Facebook page in question, nobody had the codes at the start of the thing. It's little. There's lots and lots and lots of things you really have to think about when you're doing this. Now, having the Zoom meetings running as team time topics and whatever, Dan's quite experienced with that part of it. But that's the bit that quite often catches me out when I turn up as a contractor to do this thing. I've got all the equipment. I know how it all works. But it's all the backstory stuff, like making sure it goes to the right places and all that nonsense. You've really got to think about that, Bob, if you're going to start doing a Section 1 at your end. And the other thing is just having equipment that is reliable and works. I've found those HDMI optical cables to be about short of spending a fortune on really expensive SDI cable and really expensive cameras. I found those optical HDMI cables to be a good compromise. They're not cheap, but they're not as expensive as equivalent, in my eyes at least, equivalent quality SDI stuff. You know, no, they would not withstand a worldwide tour with video gear, but for the kind of thing you're doing there in an office, you know, in a nice room or whatever, they're perfectly adequate. You know, that's just my opinion and my experience of doing this now. Probably the first live stream hybrid event I did would have been in June. So I've been doing that since, you know, I've done at least 1 or 2 a month since then. And I've kind of built up more or less what you guys have got there now. I think I can do that. But it always takes more than 2 or 3 people to do it. You just can't do it by yourself. It's a physical impossibility. And you need at least 3 computers to make it work as well.
Yeah.
There's also, speaking of optical cables, they make an optical USB cable, which if you need to do USB 2 or 3 over a decent length, works a treat.
What do you look for when you want to get that? Because I have a use for that. What do you?
I'm trying to remember who made it. I'll have to look up and see who made it. It was one of the AV accessory type outfits.
Kramer, a company called Kramer have
Kramer. That's it. Yep.
Have a means of getting USB. They have optical cable that they put different ends on. They put. I've seen. What's the one that Mac used to DisplayPort? I've seen full size DisplayPort. I've seen HDMI. I believe they do USB. I've never seen it, but I believe they do a USB one.
Yeah, this was a Kramer.
They're really expensive cables. Those ones would probably survive a world tour because they're better part of finger thickness. Those cables, they're really quite thick. Unless you buy the small installation one.
This one wasn't that bad. It was.
Yeah, they do an installation scale one, but if you're going to,
it was about 5/16, I think.
Yeah.
But the other nice thing was it supplied a fair amount of power down the line, because this was we were trying to integrate a fancy high-end depth perception camera, and it was putting a lot of data down a USB line, and normal.
So I would assume the USB 3 version of that is considerably more expensive than USB 2.
Yeah, I think we got it's a 25 foot cable, and I seem to remember is better part of $200.
Right.
You really going to need to use it.
But it made it work.
Yep.
One of the things about the good things about the Kramer system is they have a way of putting external power supply on it. So if your machinery can't drive it for whatever reason, it's quite handy to do that. Especially most cameras these days can drive a video optical cable, an HDMI optical cable, but a lot of the older ones couldn't, or they get upset with it. So they have a way of plugging in it's almost like a little USB plug. It just stuffs into the end of one of your connectors and it runs it. I like the Kramer system. It's just ridiculously expensive. But if I was touring it or using it, taking it in and out, and I would definitely go and buy some of it, particularly for the longer runs, for the length of the room. The other big advantage optical cables have is you get no earth loops from them, which are still a factor with HDMI because of the audio capabilities and stuff like that. So you can get quite interesting earth loops with the HDMI cable.
Yeah, we actually wound up with a ground loop because the 2 powered tannoy speakers are up on a grid, and they're backgrounded through the video audio separator to the monitors.
Yeah. Yep, that caught me out as well. I always thought digital will not happen. Then when I looked a bit more closely at how HDMI is assembled, like, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, a couple hundred
Now,
ohm
I'm going to
resistors fixed
interrupt
it.
here for a minute
All right,
and
Dan.
point out to everybody and everybody else that the people who have been talking here are tea time topic people, and we're used to going for a very, 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 very long time. And you can see why, because they're saying real interesting things and telling information. But I'm noticing the clock, and we've got a bunch of packing up to do here tonight.
Yeah, I think we should bring it to a close.
Yeah, and does anybody have anybody who hasn't spoken want to say something before we go here? No? Let's call it good. Lawrence, Greg, you want to
All
say
right. Ooh, I'm kind of hot.
Careful there.
Just wanted to thank everybody once again for coming. I hope that you had as much of a good time as I did. I'd also like to extend another thanks to all the folks who helped out with all the tech, in particular Dan Mortensen and Dan Sound, Lawrence Schwedler, for all of his help putting this together. August McCubbin, our Sound Lab manager, Jarek Akawili, Ben Schwedler, Michelle Mayer, Jonathan Larson, Gary Louie, Rick Chin, Gordon McGregor, as I learned in the meeting, and all of his help. And I'd like to extend a thanks to the Pacific Northwest Committee for all their help and helping me organize this meeting. Hope to see you again next month on December 7th at 6 p.m. on Zoom for the second volume of the Sylvia Massey Mike Museum. So until then, hope you stay safe and well. Thanks again for coming, and take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you.
Thank you. That was a blast.
Bye.
Here's some credits.
Oh, look at that. He's got a credits roll.
Now you're showing off, Dan.
It's just on Zoom. This is just on Zoom, but it's in the room also.
Did you get your interface working with your mixer, Dan, huh? Or is this just a video you're just playing?
This is off of the Confidence Monitor Zoom computer.
Okay.
So I'm sharing the screen.
Nice. Where's the music?
It just shows you the power that Zoom has, that you can do that, eh? It's quite simple.
Yay. All right.
Cool.
Thanks again.
All right, I'm away home. I'm waiting in my bed. It's 2:05. I'll see you later.
What's that?
It's 2:05 in the morning here, so.
It's 2:05.
2 a.m. for Gordon there
All right.
in Glasgow. Thanks again, Gordon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.